From the day we arrive on the blockchain and blinking step into the trade, there's more to lose than can never be won, more to dump than can never be saved. Influencers, tweets, and the noobs all follow, buying high, selling low at a game. But the boomers know, and Sailor, he knows that the dump is coming. It's all the same. It's the circle of exit liquidity, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and FOMO, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of exit liquidity. Some of us fall by the wayside, and some of us soar to the stars. But the influencers always win with the Lambos and their cars. So beware of the inevitable dump floor. The cycle continues, and the news get ready. Dump it all. Kryptonite, exit liquidity, hot banana, dump it all. Kryptonana, exit liquidity, dump it all. Hardonana, dump it all. It's the circle of exit liquidity, and it moves us all through despair and hope, through faith and hope, till we find our place on the path unwinding in the circle of exit liquidity.
That was fun, wasn't it?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, everyone.
Yeah, it's going great. Just I hope you enjoyed our pre-show song, our little pre-song there. It was inspired over my travels. I remember just thinking about the especially the Michael Saylor situation and about all the exit liquidity that's kind of lined up. I just think it's the circle of life people have. Some people buy low, some people buy high, etc. And so I just thought, hey, what if it did like a song? It's like the circle of life from the Lion King, but the circle of exit liquidity. And so then we just went with it, and now it's my favorite one to start the show with. It's the second time I've done it. There's actually another really funny one that we almost did for the relationship segment that we didn't end up getting done in time, but I'll spring that one on you guys at some point. But in the meantime, welcome. Hey, if you are a speaker, you're trying to get up, make sure, or if you know a speaker who's going to come up and speak, just now's the time to shake them out of the tree, shake them out of the coconut tree, as it were, and get them to come up and speak. But this is a particularly special one today because of a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, it's a current event ish, um, but also, so this is the second one we've officially co-hosted with Xano. So Xano, why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hey, pleasure to be here. My name is Gonzalo. I'm the community manager for Sano. And just to sum up Sano real quick, it's a privacy blockchain, layer one by default, um, that takes the privacy technology that's well tested, so that is CryptoNote, and expands it to other use cases beyond just digital cash, so private decentralized applications and confidential assets. So yeah, glad to be here.
Yes, thanks very much. And I've been kind of getting to know the Xano team a little bit more over time. Um, all good people. That's not just saying that because you're here and you can hear me. I didn't have to say anything, but everyone I've met from the Xano world has been pretty nice and professional and dedicated, and very happy to have them. And of course, the financial sovereignty angle, digital cash. What we really care about is something we're all kind of aligned on, I think. And so it really makes sense. And speaking of which, now we go on to Edge. And I will say, um, this space is sponsored by Edge now. And Edge is a fantastic wallet that supports Dash as well as Xano. And we always were looking forward to having as many co-hosts as possible, who, in our vein of quality and alignment. And so now the mic is yours, Edge. Would you mind just giving your pitch?
Hi, everyone. This is Paul, CEO and co-founder of Edge. We are a very privacy-focused cryptocurrency trading wallet. As you had mentioned, Joel, we support Dash. We've supported it for years, and just recently added support for Xano about 1 to 2 months ago. I think we've got more privacy protocols integrated than just about any other app on the market, with both Xano, Monero, Zcash for the full shielded transactions, and Pirate Chain integrated as well. So we're very, very core focused on privacy, and we're open source to prove what we're doing in the regards of privacy. So definitely invite people to give us a try. Edge.app.
Perfect. Sounds good. I'm not to add too much to the show, but I've been an Edge user since it was called Edge. It used to be called Airbits very, very long in the past. And yes, I've been using it for many. It's my go-to multi-coin wallet. Obviously, I use Dash Pay for most things, but it's my solid backup there. So before we officially get started, etc., with everything else, everyone who's here, just make sure you retweet. They need to come up with a better word for like retweet, right? Because it's not tweets anymore. Repost just doesn't sound good. Share the space out, repost it, get this thing going. And I will. Nicole, do you want to launch the OG intro song and then we just kick right off into everything?
Yeah, I could do that. I could
All
do
right.
that.
Let's just do that. Obviously, we take a lot of pride in our handcrafted by AI music that just sets the tone right. So as everyone else is getting all settled up and in here, and you're sharing this place out, let's hit the intro music.
Gather around the quorum, voices in the fray. Dashing like coin lead, Joel lights the way. From the chains we forge to the dreams we chase. Crypto quorum's live, it's an open space. Maximalists stand tall, multi-chainers ignite. 2025's the showdown, who's wrong, who's right. Aaron Day's got vision, rocks bringing the fire. Digi-bite and shape-shift, lifting it higher. Crypto quorum, hear the sound. Voices rising from the crowd. Talk it out, break it down. In this space, we're unbound. From the blocks to the stars we fly. Crypto quorum, you and I. Later on is with Cody, Justin Bonds, and Clay. Sal the Agron stirs it up his way. Kurt Walker chopping trees, Johnny Love on beat. Shoots in the pack, making the heat. Maximum fingers expand. One chain rule 'em all. Open land, no gatekeepers here. Just the truth we speak. Crypto forum where the future speaks. Crypto forum, hear the sound. Voices rising from the crowd. Talk it out, break it down. In this space, we're unbound. It's on the block. We fly. Crypto forum, you and I. Hash it out, stake your claim. No two visions are the same. From the code to the core, we fight, shining through in the crypto night. Crypto forum, hear the sound. Voices rising from the crowd. Talk it out, break it down. In this space, we're unbound. Tune in, join the crew. The stage is set for you. Maxi or multi, wherever you stand. Crypto Quorum's the pulse of the land. Tune in, join the crew. The stage is set for you. Maxi or multi, wherever you stand. Crypto Quorum's the pulse of the land. Tune in, join the crew. The stage is set for you. Maxi or multi, wherever you stand. Crypto Quorum's the pulse of the land.
All right, there we go. That was our original theme song. Always a good one. Definitely my favorite of all the musics that we play here. And as one of the ways we got people to attend to speak on the first space that we did, this is the 12th week in a row we've been doing this. But the first week is saying, hey, you get immortalized into the song. And so that was back when Litecoin was co-hosting with us. And we have a lot of people from that first one there. We will probably be trying to switch up the song a little bit soon because we got to include Xano and Edge in there, of course. Otherwise,
I redid the lyrics, and I was able to get the lyrics perfect. I just have to figure out how to make the AI get them in. I wasn't able to do it for today because the beat,
You guys need to post it. It was cutting in and out for me. I don't know.
Yeah, we've posted it. We've posted it before, but we could post it again.
I'm going to actually respond to this space and comment on it because we have that one as well as the Circle of Exit Liquidity, my personal favorite. We have both of those up, and and I have to say I have put so much effort, and I know Nicole's probably done it the same or more.
It's a ridiculous amount of effort into this.
But not just into this as a whole, but trying to pipe music into an X space perfectly. And it's been so this is the best we've got so far. Like I even got some advanced tools to pipe the audio output into the input on this specific thing and stuff. But there's something about when you hit those high notes and things that there's something internal into X where it suppresses those high notes a little bit, so it distorts the quality a little bit. So there's something that's just we'll get the formula perfect one of these days, or relatively perfect. But
you should check out Song Jam.
All right, Will you DM me that?
Heck yeah, you know I will.
Perfect. See, this is what I pay you for. I pay you in attention like every good creative. Anyway, so welcome everyone. Happy to have you on this episode number 12 of Crypto Quorum. We've been doing this space for a while, and it's one of the highlights of the week. And we already introduced Xano and Edge. But the topic today is, can crypto stop war? And the context for that, of course, is way back in the day. I don't know, as a show of hands, this includes the audience, by the way, who remembers Bitcoin not bombs? That phrase or a graphic of a plane dropping Bitcoins, does anyone remember any of that? Or is it just old people like me? Yeah, we got a couple. Edge, of course, Paul remembers.
I remember. I'm actually like looking through an old article that I wrote for the exact quote, but like married to Bitcoin. I wrote something along the lines of like, people got in as a mechanism for defunding the war machine.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a kind of an early Edge got rugged. Whenever you're ready to come back, whenever you're done with your timeout, feel free to come back up. But that was one of those things. There was a lot of graphics. I believe some people who were producing merch for Bitcoin in the early days, Davi Barker was one of those who created some of those early lapel pins and things like that. Big into the Bitcoin not bombs kind of thing. And the whole idea was with central banks printing money, inflating, and then using that to spend. There is a coincidence of central banking and widespread world warfare in the 20th century that might have a correlation. And by getting into cryptocurrency specifically, there's a way of curtailing that ability. And of course, it's a much more nuanced topic than just, oh yeah, use crypto, no war, yay. Which is why we have a who knows how many hours this thing's going to run space on this thing. But that's just kind of the that's the background of this. So, and I know we're going to get into the actual details, but let's go around and have all our speakers introduce themselves and just say who you are, what you do, and then super short, just binary, yes or no. Do you think crypto will stop or curtail the endless wars? So let's start out with Nicole. Why don't you actually go first? You're right up there. Oh no, they got her.
No, I'm here. Sorry. It
was a drone strike.
Copying
Oh no.
something. Sorry. What do you want me to say?
Who the hell are you? And like, what do you do?
Oh, who am I?
And then just
Who am
binary,
I?
yes or no. Does crypto stop the warfare state?
Okay. So I'm Nicole. I'm a journalist and I work in PR and marketing because journalism doesn't really pay bills. And I do a bunch of different weird jobs, just kind of like whatever, you know. And does crypto stop the war state by itself? No. Like, because actually people have to, because crypto could be, has been completely co-opted, right? So like for crypto to stop war, it has to be opted into and used against the dollar, like as opposed to the dollar, right? As opposed to fiat currency, not as something that's like, I don't know, propping up the dollar, not as something that people are using to amplify the dollar.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a little more verbose than this thing. I like to get people to just say really short, really quick, just so that we have a teaser for the rest. But I think you gave a good template for the first question then. So anyway, DB Crypto, you mind chiming in?
Hey, what's going on? So let's see, content creator, Spaces hosts X Spaces twice a week, and big into blockchain tech. Let's see, yes or no to your question. That's tough but I'm going to just say yes, because I imagine you're going to give us the chance to explain later. Because obviously I'm going to need to explain that one.
Perfect. Yeah. That's just good enough. So we got, because if everyone gives their nuanced take right out the gate, then there's going to be no argumentation. I'd want to have people say yes and then no and be like, well, yes is wrong. No, but what I really meant is this. And then you have a discussion. There's a method to this madness here, as it turns out. Cal, what you cooking up? You want to tell us who you are, what you're cooking up, and then the binary yes no answer to does crypto end war?
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. This is Cal. I'm the founder of Leo, and we've got, Leo Dex, which is a cross-chain Dex interface. And then we've got InLeo, which is a Web3 social platform. Um, and my answer to the question is no.
Nice. Yeah, we got yes and no. No, Professor McCarty, Econ Hero of Shapeshift. How's it going? You were on this original list, but I've had you
Gee,
speak again before. So say who
yeah,
you are,
GM
what do you
guys.
do, and the binary, yes or no.
Absolutely. My name is Professor McCarthy. I'm the tokenomics workstream lead over at Shapeshift, and used to study this in grad school in terms and written papers on the monetary consequences of our foreign aid spending and our military presence abroad. And so I would say the answer is no, but I won't live to see it. So, or sorry, yes, it will stop war, but I won't live to see it. That's my answer.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting on that won't live to see it time frame. I wonder if that would actually switch things up a little bit for some people. Interesting. Kenton, how's it going? You know what? I've seen you in these spaces for a long time. Definitely, I'm familiar. I don't think I've actually ever conversed with you before. But so tell everyone who you are, what do you do, and then your binary answer.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, nice to chat with you. My name's Kenton. I'm actually a node operator on Thorchain. I have a fund that buys Rune tokens and run nodes. And uh, my pronouns are anarcho-capitalist. So I fancy myself a student of Austrian economics, and I'm pretty opinionated on stuff like this. And so, yes, I think crypto can stop war and will. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so there's a lot of yeses, a few nos, and then there's like a yes on a long enough time frame that maybe it's no for now. So real quick, then Xano and then Edge, would you mind just giving the binary yes or no for whoever is running the account? Again, not speaking on behalf of the entire brand. In one case, it's a company, the other it's a decentralized blockchain. So, Xano, you want to go first? Just yes or no, real quick.
I think yes.
Interesting. Nice. Edge, what do you have to say, Paul?
I'd say not the way crypto's currently going, but we have a chance. We have to change things.
Interesting. So I know it's a nuanced take. I would probably put that into kind of a no, because it's not just crypto will do it. It's like, well, it could if things are different. So I'm going to put you down as a no, no on the binary, but I understand that we're going to get into the it's not legally binding. We're going to get into this kind of stuff. So very interesting. So first of all,
Dude.
yes. Oh,
What about me?
Didn't I cover you already?
No.
I thought I hit you up.
I see how it is. I'm about ready to bail.
Yeah. All right.
I'm just kidding.
I see you next week. Anyway, sorry. Why don't you chime in? You know what it is? It's that when Edge got deco-hosted for whatever rugging reason, you popped up into that ignore because I already thought I talked to them space up at the top. But so yeah, you get to introduce yourself. So who the hell are you, Mr. Cody Man? And what do you do? And your binary answer.
Yeah, so my name is Cody. I am a UI UX designer, a serial space host, and a serial entrepreneur. I'm also the Chief Engagement Officer for Layer 1X. Layer 1X is a fully decentralized, bridgeless Layer 1 blockchain that focuses on true native interoperability. We've built our own VM and consensus models from the ground up. We actually run a dual VM model, which allows us to not only be compatible with EVM, but also non-EVM as well. So our whole ethos is about uniting, which I think is perfect for today's subject, is definitely uniting all of Web3 and crypto and creating that seamless user experience that that utopia vision of what everybody is looking for in this space. To answer your question, I'm going to go a little off into left field, but my answer is no. As long as there's humans on this earth and our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ is not here to reign, there will always be war.
Well, there you go. Actually, I think that that's something a lot of people will maybe agree with. Um, the infinite warfare state is a little bit of a nuance. We'll kind of get into that in a little bit more detail as far as like the distinction between just war, like people killing each other, like versus this whole more contextual to modern, modern world kind of like 20th century and beyond type thing. But Patriot Sounds, I don't believe you were up to speak before when I gave everyone an intro, and I do know that clearly the crowd we have today is very touchy if you pass them over. So why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and your binary answer?
Yeah, not touchy here, bro. It's okay. Hey guys, Patriot Sounds, content creator, Thorchain educator, blah blah blah. The answer is no. That's it.
Perfect. Wow, that was like a record time. Should give you the instant send award for the most concise answer right there. But good stuff. So now, like, clearly there's a distinction between like types of war. And first of all, does anyone raise your hand or just chime in if you think that crypto will stop or almost get rid of war just as a whole? Like, it's just not going to happen anymore with crypto. I don't think anyone really thinks that, right? So definitely let me know if you do think that. So then we could definitely debate that part. But as far as the warfare state is kind of concerned, obviously there have been wars for millennia. However, in the past, there have been, there have been much less of like a total war thing, because war grinds an economy to a halt, kind of, because the economy goes into overdrive producing things that people don't really like pay money for in direct economic trade. It's more things that just blow up other things. And so if you have like decades long war, sure, some people profit off of it, but a lot of money just gets drained and destroyed. And so in order to afford that historically, you would have to collect a lot more taxes from the local populace, or it has happened a lot of times, the government took out loans in the form of like war bonds. And I remember, anyone who's ever seen those old school things from the US government saying like, buy bonds, that's the way you defeat the etc. And now no one even really bothers with that, because the ability to print money and devalue the currency just kind of takes that money and socializes the losses amongst everyone. So you don't have to have the actual bad UX, as it were, of harassing people for extra tax money, because then people would vote against this or rise up against their leaders. Or you don't actually have have to convince people to lend their money to the government by buying bonds, sort of a voluntary taxation in a certain weird way. So you don't have to deal with all that kind of stuff. It just happens. And so we've seen, of course, a lot of military conflicts around the world. We're just talking about ones that the U.S. was involved with that have centered around, that have had either not had a declaration of war or not had like an explicit like vote or high popular support, or have been kind of like a little endless, just kind of keeping it going. And then, of course, the influence of the military industrial complex, as it were, in sort of propagating this type of thing. So first, for those who answered yes, that crypto would end this, what is the key reason that crypto, or the actual tech of crypto, would actually help curtail this kind of endless warfare state? Who wants to start first as far as DB crypto? How's that going to work out? Let us know.
Okay. So yeah, actually, I'm surprised so many did say yes. I thought I'd be the contrarian here. But so first, I want to state that the question is, can crypto stop war? Not will it? And I agree with, I don't know who it was, someone else that said that it probably won't happen in our lifetime. And the reason why I say it can, and this might get into a little bit of the tinfoil hat type stuff, but wars they're money machines, and they make money for people. A lot of wars are driven by profit, unfortunately. And one of the main benefits of blockchain and crypto is transparency, and what it can well, when you bring in the transparency aspect of it, and for one, I think we would obviously see where our money's going, how our governments are spending it, and we'd be able to kind of audit it a little bit easier. So we would know that the IRS lost $8 billion or whatever it was, and they can't figure out where the hell it went. I mean, seriously, come on. And it's probably a lot more than that. But that's kind of why I say it can stop wars, because if this technology truly got adopted and taken into the mainstream, we wouldn't have as much shady shit, I think, going on. But now the other question, will it? I don't see it. That's the problem. And that's, I hate to say it, but the longer I've been in the space, the less and less confident I see it going the direction that I originally wanted and hoped it would get into. And I haven't been in here as long as you, but I've been in the space now for 6 years. And I see it almost being taken over in a way, with a lot of the infrastructure and Coinbase space, the stablecoin bill. While and I know I'm going off topic here, but while it's bullish for the space in a way, it's just a hidden CBDC way for the governments to control our money. USDT, USDC, they're 100% centralized. If the government wants to freeze them, all they have to do is tell you Circle to do it, and they will. So, and I don't like that. That's the way the industry is going. And that's why I think, will it? Possibly not, at least not in our lifetime. Can it? 100%.
Okay, Professor, I think you had your hand up next, right?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I mean, I would say part of it has to do with, the kind of history of the situation and where we're at. And so, you know, like we're in this super imperialism era, and part of that is because of what's called the exorbitant privilege of the United States, that we can, run twin deficits and there's no consequence of it. And so, eventually that's going to collapse in some kind of spectacular fashion. And it really just depends on what the new order is that emerges, and kind of whether the new flight to safety is in another country's treasuries or if it's in a digital asset. And I think it will be in a digital asset. I think most economies are one hyperinflation episode away, or one bank run away from widespread on-chain adoption, because things are getting easier and more comprehensible for the general public. That it's been around for 15, 20 years sometimes in some people's minds, right? So it's not this new kind of scammy thing anymore. So I do see a evolution of the unipolar dynamics that we currently see, with the United States, kind of running the shots with the World Bank and the IMF, and the Bretton Woods institution that was set up post World War II, that essentially made it so that the U.S. can print money as much as it wants and export its inflation across the world, that dynamic is going to come to an end. We don't know when it's going to come to an end, and it's going to be one of those situations where they're going to keep pushing it, and they're going to keep pushing the debt, and the debt to GDP ratio is probably going to be larger in the U.S. than any country we've seen before the actual defaults start to happen, or the actual like real spikes in interest rates start to happen for what people are charging the US. But I think ultimately, this flagrant irresponsible use of money and going into all these wars that aren't supported, that aren't even properly voted on, and things like that, and spending billions and trillions of dollars, these are all supported by the system that the current monetary system. And so by building and by having things, like every drop raises the sea, like every incremental removal of friction to onboarding into this world is going to make it easier for people to offboard themselves from this monetary, military, industrial complex that they're really part of. And so I think it will happen, but I think it's going to take a lot of time, and I think it's going to take a lot of adoption. And then I think it's not going to be like a complete utopia, but I think we'll have more eras of the post-Soviet kind of peace dividend that we saw before 2003 than more eras of the last 20 years that we've seen.
Yeah, fascinating. That's kind of a very comprehensive perspective. Um, Before we get to Kenton real quick, Rock, do you want to introduce yourself and say who you are, what you do, and then give just the binary? We're already past the binary, but why not put you back into the binary of will crypto end the warfare state? Yes or no?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Rock Zacharias, CEO of Lunar Digital Assets, Venture Studio, Incubated Polygon, QuickSwap, and others. I serve on the board for Polygon's grant program, mentor for Tim Draper's Bitcoin Fi Accelerator, founder of QuickSwap, and now, for the first time in like 6 years, co-founder again of now LitVM, the Litecoin Layer 2. Being supported by Litecoin Foundation and Charlie Lee, et cetera. My opinion, I don't think, crypto will end war. I think war will always be a thing, or at least as long as the foreseeable future that I can like fantasize or, try to pontificate about. But I think it'll definitely reduce it. I think a lot of the reason we fight wars, I mean, if you notice, almost every country we've invaded for the last 30 years have been countries that didn't play ball with our central banking system. Or that were like trying to get off our dollar or threatened to get off our dollar. And, what do you know? They either end up with weapons of mass destruction, bio, weapons, or they're like raping kids or something, or whatever the reason is. And then we got to assassinate their leader or go to war with them or, change the regime. So look, I obviously some of these things actually are true, but I think a lot of it is motivated by, oh, they're a really shitty dictator, but hey, they also happen to not like the dollar, so let's change the regime. Let's kill two birds with one stone. Maybe is how they justify it in their own minds. But I think if we get away from a state money system, then I think, and I think that is the end game. I think for a long time they'll live together, and it'll help the state money systems be more responsible because they'll have to compete now in a free market of ideas and of currencies, and you can have now private currencies. That's what we're building, right? That's essentially what it is: decentralized and private market kind of currencies, as opposed to public markets, is what I'm referring to. But if we have a system eventually where it's all just these decentralized free market cryptos, and I don't think stablecoins are that. I think stablecoins, if anything, create more war because we want to force people to use our stablecoin, which is backed by our dollars, based on the new Genius Act and others. But eventually, I think if seigniorage or printing of money and forcing people to use money is not such a big motive, I think that reduces, I don't know how much, but maybe 50% of the motivation for war at the moment, maybe more.
Cool. Well, that is definitely a good point. I do think that that can definitely detract a lot from the ability to keep that stuff going. Kenton, you had something to say.
Yeah, I have a few points to make. So I think when I say crypto can stop war, I mean like war as we know it today. I think there'll always be conflict between. It's just a question of at what scale. And I think we can dramatically reduce the scale of war that we currently see and have seen in the past to make it very, very small. And it's all a function of property rights. So it's really no different than, today the poor people have a much higher standard of living than kings did 1,000 years ago, right? And the reason for that is property rights. And so I think the same thing can happen with war. We can dramatically reduce it. And it's because war is a venture like anything else. It has to be financed. It has to be paid for. You got to pay the soldiers. You got to buy the bombs, buy the bullets, all that kind of stuff. Where does that money come from? It comes from stealing, from theft. And so the reason we have industrial scale war around the world is because we have industrial scale theft around the world. If we can reduce that theft, we defund the police, basically defund the warmongers. So even though these people will still exist and still want to kill others, their ability to will be greatly diminished. They'll have to go raise the money voluntarily, and the average person isn't willing to voluntarily fund a war, right? And
Yeah,
so
I mean, just to if I could give a little more on your point, and before you move on from that, think about this: if the government was not able to just print infinitely and put us into debt by printing and bonds and all this whole intricate system, if they were not able to do that, and they instead, let's say right now, when we are, either giving all this money to Ukraine or defending Israel, bombing Iran, all this stuff, if the government went to the public, the U.S. public, and put out a vote and said, hey, can you guys increase your taxes every month by $1,000, and then we can go bomb these places, how much of the public would say yes to that? I think probably not very much. I think the public has voted for no more war. That's a lot of the reason they voted for Trump. So but they don't have to do that. They could just print the money now, right? This was a big, change. And I forget what president it was. It was one of our presidents who said, by having the ability to make money, it'll make it way easier for us to be able to, he was saying it, I think, in a positive way, like we won't have such a hard time raising funds to defend ourselves, because many of our early wars were more about defense, right? But now, it's turned into this offensive tool.
yeah, I'll keep going. So sticking with that theft, with stealing, inflation, all that kind of stuff. Look at the history of gold and precious metals. I don't know if anyone's read Debt: The Last 5,000 Years. It's this fantastic book on the history of money, and part of it is dedicated to how gold and silver became money, and a lot of it was driven by kings and warlords saying, raising an army, 10,000 strong, not having anything to pay them with, but saying, hey, we go take over this city next to us. You can rape and pillage. And in your pillaging, you take everything, you keep whatever you find. And any gold and silver you find, you bring back to your home, and that's money in my town, in my area. That's how they paid the soldiers, by deeming gold and silver money in their local jurisdiction. And that's what gave gold and silver some value, right? So the whole idea of being on a gold standard, that doesn't stop war. What we need is a free market in money, where there's no money being decreed that has to be used by any central authority, central power, because all that does is give that central authority more power to then go wage war and whatever, blah blah blah. So we need a free market in money to stop war, and I see Bitcoin and crypto doing that, separating money and state. And Bitcoin is the first form of property that can't be stolen by somebody with guns. And that's never existed before in humanity. And so it flips the whole script. So for example, any government that wants to steal to wage war or wants to pillage a new territory to then finance war afterwards, how are they going to, if Bitcoin is money, if Bitcoin is like really whatever we all think it could be, how are they going to steal it? How are they going to acquire it? It's if it's not impossible to steal, it's an order of magnitude more difficult than stealing any physical goods in that new territory, or from their existing territory. So we have this form of property that can't be stolen that humans are now valuing. If we add privacy into that mix, it's like we've won. The whole point of privacy is to protect yourself from thieves, from people coming to steal from you. And governments are hands down the largest thieves in the entire world in history, current and in the past. And if we prevent their ability to steal from the average person, we prevent their ability to finance wars. Yeah, so that's it. That's my rant.
Nice. As Cody, you want to chime in next, then we go to Patriot Sounds.
Yeah, great discussion so far. I agree with a lot of the things that are being said. However, I'm thinking of the root of all this. I mean, it's great that crypto and blockchain technology will help in the future, but I'll go back to, as long as there's human psychology around greed, contention, fear, power seeking, tribalism, all that kind of stuff, if we can't address those particular things right out of the gate, our own human psyche is the one that's going to limit or make it hard for blockchain to kind of keep moving forward towards that world peace that that we're talking about here. And it's really interesting, and I know that there's no comparison between a real world war type of thing versus the kind of experiences that a lot of us projects have. But if you really think about it, there's a lot of parallelism there between the closed doors, the secrecy, the lack of transparency, the lack of education, within our own communities. That really creates a lot of contention. It creates a lot of FUD, distrust, and all these different things. And so I mean, it goes back to what I was just saying again. As long as there's a human psychology that's being played into this, it doesn't matter if you're already in crypto, you've already adopted crypto, and until we can solve and address those kind of human concerns, where it comes down to people's lack of information, sends them into a spiral of, are they going to be able to survive? Are they going to be able to put food on the table because of tariffs or additional tax or this or that, or war, breaking up supply chains and things like that? These are all kind of the things that need to be addressed, because it doesn't matter how good of an infrastructure you have, it creates chaos, which we all know that once that happens, everybody steps out of the formation of any type of set structure, because when it boils down to it, at the end of the day, they don't care. They only care about their needs at that time. And it's something that we need to address, in my opinion.
Well, Patriot, what do you think? What do you think about what you just said?
Yeah, I think it's fine. Actually, I think, Joel, I need to switch sides here because I was confused about the topicality of the conversation. So the topic, as it's described in the space, is, can crypto stop war? I'm firmly no. But then you said, can crypto stop the warring nation state? And my answer to that is yes. And I basically would just say that Kenton adequately described my opinion very well. I actually have nothing really to add to it. I think he's pretty comprehensive thinker when it comes to that area. So I don't want to waste anyone's time just rehashing the same material. But I would like, I actually sent you, the host and the co-host, a guy sent you a picture because I can't upload to the comments for some reason to the speaker. I don't know why. I would like to share two books with the audience and the speakers, if I may. The first book is Constant Battles, The Myth of the Peaceful Noble Savage by Stephen A. LeBlanc. And the second book is War Before Civilization, The Myth of the Peaceful Savage. They're similar. That's Lawrence H. Keeley. Okay, so yes, the crypto can take away the ability for nation states to have war because war is just logistics at the end of the day. The reason why we do it now is because, to Kenton's point, they basically siphon our purchasing power by stealing, and they redirect that purchasing power into buying weaponry. So that's why basically we're on the point of collapse the United States is, and many countries around the world, is because governments steal in order to finance war. It was said very eloquently by Kenton. So yes, we can stop that. It's going to be a very painful transitional period, but we can't stop war. And the reason why, as I alluded to those two books, is warfare is intrinsic to our psychology as humans. This is our evolution. Actually, everything revolves around warfare. There is not a culture, nor continent, nor race anywhere in the world throughout history that has any unique story in terms of this. Everywhere you look in history is complete barbarism and massacre and rape and pillage and just the most horrendous things you can imagine. All humans are geared this way. War, in terms of, if you think of humans as software, war is not a bug. It is a feature. It is a catalyst to our intelligence as well, because as tribes, tools and weapons go hand in hand, right? Like the ability to kill one another requires innovative thinking. And this results in sophistication like bow, arrow, spears, pole arms, long swords, armor, blah, blah, blah. Eventually, we've gotten to the point where we have really incredible kinetic weaponry and tanks and things like that, right? So war is a psychological part of us that we cannot get rid of. Now, we can advance as a culture in terms of where we can have like a homogenous society where we have similar values, right? But if there is a sufficient divergence in a macro multicultural state, then there will always be war. And these can just be for, religious belief. These can be resource constraints. There are various reasons why war takes place, but it is always going to be part of human psychology. That is the next challenge after we stop the nation state war. That is just a means of education. And I think we can get there, but it's not going to happen within my lifetime.
Anyone have any alternative points of view?
I
Kenton,
do.
did you have your hand
Yeah.
back up?
Yeah, I do.
go for
Yeah,
it.
I want to address the psychology part. War is always going to be with us, all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if anyone has actually here done any like mental health therapy. Studying like why does the same, like maybe somebody who keeps getting in an abusive relationship, or they keep getting dating somebody who's always cheating on them or whatever. Those like traps people are stuck in. War is the same thing, and it all comes back to like our nervous systems. We're addicted to these toxic scenarios, these toxic environments. So until we heal ourselves, we can't heal those conflicts, right? And a part of therapy is setting boundaries, right? You got to set proper boundaries with these toxic people and whatnot. And setting a boundary with a toxic boyfriend or girlfriend is no different than setting a boundary with a toxic government. And those boundaries for feelings and emotions are the exact same thing as property rights. Right? You're setting a boundary, saying I don't want you to infringe on my property. And right now, currently, nobody wants to heal. Nobody wants to get better. That's why they stay in these toxic relationships. That's why we stay in war. The average person wants government. They think it's necessary. They believe in it. They're addicted to it. So if Bitcoin takes over, becomes a world currency, what that means is the average person is actually starting to say no to government. They're starting to change. They're starting to heal. They're starting to set those boundaries. They're starting to take on property rights and saying no to government. They're saying no to that toxic relationship. So if Bitcoin and crypto does end up becoming widespread throughout the world, that is a form of healing. That is the average person taking stock in themselves and how they interact with everyone else in the world. So the only way for like they're hand in hand. The two go together. So it's Bitcoin fixes this.
Okay, but is it if the reason that people are adopting Bitcoin and crypto is because governments are adopting Bitcoin and crypto? Like if people are adopting it because governments are adopting it as part of national reserves, is that really, is that really people taking a stance against governments?
Yes and no. I think people are going to, just like society has foolishly enslaved itself by becoming addicted to government, no different than an individual enslaving themselves to heroin or crystal meth. They're looking for an escape, right, to feel better. Um, there, I think I think there's a decent chance that society could unwittingly uh, subscribe to being healthy by adopting Bitcoin. And really they're just doing it to be greedy. I just want to make money, right? They're just seeing it as to win. But indirectly they could be, once they own it and start thinking about it, like maybe that sets them on the path of healing.
I mean, I think we had a lot of adoption also before governments ever really supported. I mean, even with governments actively attacking us, we still were at, close to $3 trillion in overall market cap between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, not even including all the companies built around these things. I guess another point to make that's like is not just that that crypto can help lower the incentives for war, lower the funding for war, but is also it lowers the repercussions of these things for the people that have been hurt so much by them. You know, like for example, in Zimbabwe, they had hyperinflation because of their war, the Congo War. And so when you have these wars that are funded by printing money, who pays the price? It's the people. It's not the politicians, right? It's the people. And it's usually the poorest people because politicians have much better connections to move their assets into, inflation resistant, hedges, insurance, different kind of assets. The people don't. The people don't know what they're doing. They barely understand inflation. Even in bad countries where there's tons of inflation, they don't fully understand why it's happening, how to protect themselves from it. So it's not just that crypto Bitcoin can lower war. It's also that if we get rid of these countries in bad governments and even some decent governments that still do it, ability to wage war, then we get rid of this thing that has been crippling to so many societies, so many countries over human existence. I mean, you might argue. I think there's an argument for it has hurt every society up, through human existence in some way or another, going back to like Romans and others.
Kenton, you're trying to chime in again, huh?
No, I'm not. No. I said my
Oh, you had
piece.
your
I've gone
hand
mute.
up. Okay.
No,
What?
I'm done.
Well, it's glitching on you. It's misrepresenting your wishes, just like the state does sometimes with war and stuff like that. But anyway, are you taking off, Cody? Is that what the wave's for?
No, I hit the wrong button.
Oh,
I
okay.
just wanted to add something to the
Go
psychology
for
thing
it.
that Kent was talking about. Um, just to kind of give a little bit of a pushback, I agree, but I disagree with the consensus that he gave because in reality, if you look at the psychology of a human, structure and infrastructure are critical especially for patients of mental health for their survival, right? Structure provides the predictability and the purpose that they need because it provides safety and that self-efficacy that they need to be able to heal, as you said. Therapy is definitely to heal. It is also meant to look inwards, like you talked about as well. But on the same side, is it's about to learn about the tools that you can put into a toolbox to allow you to keep moving forward in that journey of life. And as much as we like to deny it or challenge it, of us needing infrastructure, routines, things like that in our daily life, we need those things because that's what helps us on so many different levels. And if you look at it, I mean, that's why we have an intrinsic motivation to be able to connect with other people, because there is power, there is safety by connecting with people. And over time, over history, that's where a lot of that has been distorted. That's where a lot of it has been controlling and taken advantage of through various types of governments, dictatorships, all that kind of stuff, which has caused trauma, right? So it doesn't matter if you're an addict trying to heal from trauma, or trying to overcome grief, whatever it might be. We need to look at it from that thing that it's not that we're awaking to get out of the government. It's just that we're being woke to the idea of, are we being taken advantage of? Are we being manipulated? Are we being basically traumatized to the point where we can't reach our full potential? And that's what therapy is all about, is just trying to re help people introduce a new thought process, that this isn't the only way, that there is a better way of living. And in my opinion, that's what we are trying to do here as OGs in the space, is trying to educate people that your traditional finance that you grew up with is not the only financial infrastructure that can be, and here's why. And we're pulling back the curtain, and in reality, I agree with you that there is a lot of similarity and parallelism there. But I just want to make that clear, that it's just not, we're trying to throw infrastructure out the window, governments out the window. It's just, we're trying to awake people and give them the tools that they need to be able to make that journey to a healthier, happier life.
Well, I agree with everything you said, except I do think we're trying to throw governments out the window. And I totally agree with you with psychology.
I'm just trying to get us not rugged. But saying the keywords now.
I mean, are you guys? I'm a hardcore libertarian, but I don't think we should have no government. I think some things that government brings are great. Property rights is something that governments help us to achieve. There may be other ways to achieve it, but I would argue probably governments are one of the best ways to achieve property rights. Anti-fraud laws. There's a lot of
Yeah.
things that governments are good for. Defense. But yeah.
Those things can
Those
exist
good at the
without
defense
having a
part. Maybe
monopoly
that's
on
why
the
we're talking
service.
about this.
Those all can be provided without a monopoly. So
Yeah,
we all agree those things are
arguably,
good.
I like to
Yeah.
fantasize about that too, but I don't know that all of them, like defense. I don't know. I think probably for defense we should have some. I mean, like, would militias be like? Could we just do it through militias? I don't know. In this era when we have nukes and things, if our militias would be enough, I would like to think. I would like to hope that, but I just don't know that that's
So, but
reality, or if it is a better reality than what we have now.
I don't know if this is changing the
Well,
topic
I
or
mean,
not.
I guess
Go
to
ahead.
counter myself, when what we have now is like we want government for defense, but then they end up just waging war across the world. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's the problem. Is when you give them a monopoly, they take it too far.
That's exactly it, right? You want to, if you have cancer, you want to get rid of all of the cancer, not be left over with one cell, right? And having that tiny, libertarian wet dream, that tiny, itty bitty wee government is still a cancer cell, and it's just going to metastasize and spread. And that's the problem. I want to harken back to psychology and feeling safe. It is human psychology is like the problems people have, mental health problems. They're all perverse ways of a person trying to feel safe, and same with the idea of having this tiny itty bitty government. We need this to feel safe, but we're unwittingly putting ourselves in an unsafe position. And until the individual or society steps back and really thinks about it, they're not going to get it right. But with Bitcoin, which is really cool, is that they're a person buying Bitcoin is starting to protect themselves, trying to feel safe from inflation, feel safe from the theft, and that could be a catalyst, to pulling back all the layers of the onion and understanding how it all works. So it all does come back to feeling safe, and I think that is ultimately what could drive a lot of people to Bitcoin. The more, if people are like, especially in the third world, if there's more and more inflation and people losing money and Bitcoin's continuing to go up and appreciate, like, people are just going to capitulate and just start buying it, right? Like, it's inevitable, really.
Yes, safe in some ways can be the enemy of progress. Comfort can be the enemy of progress. Having some infrastructure, having some structure, having some protections like property rights can be good for growth. But if complacency, comfort, and safety can be, adversarial to growth.
So let me actually drop. Actually, Professor, do you have something to say before I derail this whole thing?
No, go ahead and derail. Yeah, I think we've gotten derailed plenty. So re-rail rather.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it seems like the concept is like, well, yes, crypto will provide a lot of sovereignty that will get people away from involuntarily funding wars, but it'll take some time. And also there's a lot of like psychological things about, are people ready to be out of this, etc. So let me kind of take it a little bit back to like the technical stuff, as far, well, not technical necessarily, but like the mechanisms by which endless war are funded, and also, and then I'm going to drop like a hella bearish case for how government continues to perpetuate the cycle of endless war, even if crypto gets mass adoption. And so, oh wait, Cody, are you taking off? You just dropped three waves.
Yeah, this time's for real. I gotta go. Great conversation. Would love to keep it going, but yeah, Kenton, anytime you want to jump in, I love psychology. I use psychology models in my UI UX design and data stuff. So I could talk with you for hours, my friend. So anytime you want to call, let's do it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for participating, and have a good rest of the day. So let me drop how it happens, and then the bear, right? So currently, there's two big ways how the government manages to essentially extract endless money from people. Warfare is kind of the big way that this shows up, right? But it's not necessarily the only way that this happens. But basically, there's two big things. One is the entire world ish has most of their money and spending money, especially in um, custodial, censorable kind of bank accounts and things like that. Where if the government wanted to just take a haircut and just say, here's all your money, they just can take it. So, first of all, tax protesting doesn't really work out super well. Not to mention, of course, like Irwin Schiff, Peter Schiff's dad, died in prison for that very thing, for trying to resist that. But if you have all your money in surveilled custodial things, it's really hard to say, I'm tired of funding all this stuff. Voting doesn't work. I'm just going to take my money and go home. And then the other thing, of course, is I mentioned the money printer. Of course, you can just continually do that socialized invisible tax by printing. But here's how, again, just to throw the most bearish case possible. Here's a scenario of how maybe all this stuff continues or gets worse under crypto. So first of all, we do have a lot more adoption, a lot more capital adoption, et cetera, of crypto. But for the vast majority of crypto people, it's all custodial, meaning it's all on exchanges, it's all places like that where you could basically, the government says, hey, you want to, it's cute that you think that Bitcoin fixes this, but it's all on Coinbase. So buy, it's all confiscated. And California just passed a law, I believe, to be able to claim unclaimed property at crypto exchanges after 36 months to be able to just say, okay, it's discarded, we'll take it. And not just hold it in escrow somewhere, but like take it. So first of all, I see a ton of custodial, especially a lot of this major recent capital kind of flow where in some ways I've seen people actually selling their Bitcoin in self-custody to buy shares of MicroStrategy and things like that. And that stuff is just, for the cypherpunk in me, is just awful. But you have so much money in custodial services so that people could just be potentially confiscated. But then there's the other thing, which is the money printer. I don't think crypto solves the money printer on its own, because if people have it in custodial services, they can print paper crypto, paper Bitcoin. I've written a few articles about this on my personal page up there. But basically, let's just say there's, if you have a strategic reserve of, 1,000 Bitcoin or whatever like that, you could sell or pay or whatever, transfer Bitcoin custodially, and above and beyond that amount that isn't supposedly in there, even if you have a address to where it is on the blockchain, which again, Michael Saylor doesn't like to do. He's trying to say, no, why would you do that? There is no other ledger of how much Bitcoin you have promised to people or paper you've sold on exchanges. And we see this with, especially it's been the Monero and Bitcoin Cash community. I've noticed they've done these kind of bank runs on exchanges where they've just withdrawn all the money, and they've every single time the exchanges have paused withdrawals and I guess and essentially run out of the actual money to pay back the customers, and the price has spiked every single time this has happened as well. So I don't see it out of the realm of possibility.
Wow, I know I've heard us talk about Trace Mayer had the annual, I forget what he called it, Not Your Keys Day or something. But it never really had much effect that I saw. You're saying you have actually seen this where the exchanges pause, and then because they're having to, they've lent it out, or they sold it, or they're doing something nefarious or weird with it. And you're saying you've seen the prices spike and the exchanges close withdrawals. I don't remember ever seeing that.
Yes, look up the term BCH bank run, and you'll see lots of things on it. I'll if you remind me later, I'll find specific instances of where right after this happened, you could kind of correlate it to a price increase, as well as exchanges halting withdrawals and things like for technical maintenance very conveniently during.
Wow.
But yes, this has happened, and I think people forget with FTX that FTX, they just kind of remember that it was a giant scam and it blew up, but people don't remember how long there was a massive mismatch in the amount of crypto they actually had access to and the amount they promised to customers. So there was a lot of fake crypto floating around there for a while, in terms of people counting on there's this much out there because it's on their account balance sheet, but then they'd already spent the actual crypto somewhere else. So you could still inflate it this way, kind of like even under a gold standard, you could still have an inflated currency. And it wasn't until, I guess FDR and then Nixon, et cetera, that we started to get away from that. But it's not like it's ironclad. And then let me get a little bit as the final thing in this big old ramble, bear ramble. Let me give a kind of like funnier but maybe dystopian thing of imagine. So we had war bonds back in the day. There's no saying that in an era where presidents sell meme coins, multiple presidents in multiple countries sell meme coins, that they wouldn't bring back digital war bonds in NFT format. Like, as far as you see people signing missiles, like why wouldn't they sell commemorative NFT for this missile that blew up this thing or whatever, why wouldn't they tokenize and sell live streams of the front lines of the war? Someone would pay for it. And why not tokenize, your Purple Heart or whatever medals you're doing? Why not sell that on NFT marketplaces? The Degen Casino and the amount of things that people are betting on. Like, what if the government ran their own instance of something like Polymarket, where they would just like bet on chances of an airstrike today or whatever, and they took a piece of all that? Like, there are so many monetization degen opportunities thanks to crypto for a government to just milk the crap out of a war and even get people raring to get into a war, as long as it's not their children that are going to fight, because they can profit off of it or have a good time degenning. So that's like ultimate black pill right there. But basically, this whole overview is just to say that, yeah, crypto, especially the way it's going, is not going to stop war or the infinite warfare state at all. And I don't 100% believe that, but I presented the bearish case. Cal, you had your hand up. You haven't spoken in a while. Why don't I get to you first, and then Patriot Sounds?
Yeah, I actually was gonna kind of take, because what came to mind when you were talking is, we've been talking about could crypto stop war, but one thing I've always had a lot of interest in is blockchain-based voting. And essentially, like, can you take a large democracy, which has obviously become a delegated democracy, and turn it into, or at least, kind of move along the spectrum towards more of a direct democracy, by allowing people to vote on the blockchain. So, for example, like everyone's got a smartphone now. So imagine if everyone in the US, for example, was given, the choice to vote on various things, like should we, bomb this location, and here's the data. And obviously there's going to be a lot of nuance there, because you can't, give away war strategy, for example. But maybe in a less um, how should I say, less confidential type of voting matrix, is there potential for blockchain to have more of an impact in answering the question of this space, as opposed to, crypto and things related specifically to money?
All right. Who? Patriot. You want to
I
jump
mean,
in next? Or
oh yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
Rocky started talk, and then Patriot.
Okay. I mean, I guess one of the questions I would have there is, I mean, I think it sounds really cool, and I think it would be probably a great experiment for the world to run. I'm trying to think back through history. Have we ever? Yeah, we have had direct democracies, and I would want to look at like what were the pros and cons of that architecture. My initial um, thinking is what's that meme GIF whatever where I don't know, I think it's like a Middle Eastern guy is like, we can't give it to the people because the people are retarded. I didn't act that well, but anyways, you guys might know the
I
thing I'm
agree
talking
with the
about.
sentiment, though.
So I guess more of a joke, but I mean I don't know if the people should be voting directly on every issue. I don't know. I mean, maybe that would be great, but I mean, a representative, republic, like we have in the U.S., seems like a great system, but it does have lots of drawbacks. Are there examples in history? Does anyone know of any examples in history where, and by the way, just because there aren't any doesn't mean it's not a good option or that it shouldn't be tried. But have there been any successful models of this? I mean, I guess let's think about it from a company standpoint. Are there any companies that give every decision? I mean, and then yeah, let's take that to the extreme. How many things do you take to the community, to the public? Do they vote on every single thing? There are thousands of laws and rules passed, probably, if I had to guess, in all cities and country, state, countries, cities, counties, municipalities. There's probably 1,000 laws passed a day. So at what level do you give that control to the community? Are they voting on every little piece? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would, just to butt in, I would, be really curious about like real time examples, like you said, make maybe in smaller sets, like a company. Because I think the issue is if you go historical, obviously there's never been this level of access to information. So in the past, I think this would have been impossible. Like if you go to a tribe and you say, hey, everybody vote on this, and some guys were out, hunting for a week, they're not caught up on what's been happening lately, locally with everything going on. And that's kind of the society we live in today, where yeah, like if there was a something put to vote, and everyone got a notification on their phone that said, hey, you need to go through this slide deck and then make a decision and vote after you've read it. That's something that can be done these days that couldn't have been done before. But I definitely agree that not every single decision should be voted on. It's kind of a spectrum, but I
There's
would say
another
it solves
option.
an
Oh, go ahead,
it solves an
finish, and
issue
I have
with
another.
yeah. It solves an issue with, I would say probably everybody on the space, and definitely broader, speaking more broadly, is unhappy with the current decision making, by people who are so-called elected, into making those decisions.
It would be super cool, and we actually do this in crypto already, and so we already have the governance systems through like Aragon and things to do this. Is a more fluid delegation system. So you could have it where every person has the right to vote on everything that pertains to them, meaning if it's a country, a federal, a nationwide vote, everybody counts. If it's a state vote, only if you're in that state you count. If it's a city vote, and so on. But then what you could do is give everybody the ability to delegate their voting power to someone else. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a congressman. Maybe it could be a congressman. Maybe it could be, I might want to give mine, Ron Paul, or I might want to give mine to an Elon, or I don't know, a Robert Breedlove, or so. It's like just people that I respect their opinion and align more with them on certain things. And you could even give more specific permissions. If it is an economic issue, I want to give it to Ron Paul. If it is a climate issue, I don't know, I want to give it to AOC or whatever, whatever everyone wants. And you can delegate, different categories to different people. That actually seems like a system to me that could work. It would be a whole different kind of way of politics, though.
So, I mean, what you're describing is essentially like Switzerland, but with like delegation. So, yeah, Switzerland's the closest real world example of that, with a national referendum 4 times a year. Small towns, local and canton levels have more votes than that. Elected officials still run the day-to-day operations, but they do have a lot more say in the actual uh, budgets, building permits, things like that. And then on on a business level or an organization level, Mondragon corporations have been operating in Spain for decades now. One of the largest worker co-ops, where they have democratic governance and major decisions are voted on. Delegates still manage the day-to-day stuff. And I mean, some DAOs like Shapeshift DAO, like we have all of our organizational decisions through snapshot votes, the product direction, the new features that are coming online. Everything is transparent and is voted on, and anybody can come in with like a small amount of tokens and participate. So there are some issues with this, though, where there's participation fatigue, where people burn out quickly. There's delegation that becomes a little bit cumbersome. And then, like you said before, there's some expertise gap where not everyone is able to evaluate complex proposals all the time. And so you'll want to delegate to certain people. But then, how is delegation rewarded, if at all? So there becomes a lot of niche issues within there. But I do think that there's a lot of room for more inclusion and more buy-in in political will going
Wouldn't
forward.
it, yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be badass if you had that optionality, that flexibility to where, like, okay, maybe you delegate all your votes to your president, but then all of a sudden your president that you thought was not going to get us into wars and was going to lower spending is all of a sudden spending a lot and getting us into wars. Then you might go, you know what? I'm going to pull back my votes from that guy. And wouldn't it be interesting to see in real time, have a real time feedback loop, of like, you know, let's say it was Trump or any president. Typically, a president has high approval when they get in office. That's their highest. And typically it just goes down, you know, until they leave office. And
Right.
that's because they put on a, you know, pretty face and they said the right things publicly and everybody was excited for them. But then as time goes on, they actually don't fulfill their promises, and it turns out they said things to get voted, you know. So if all of a sudden at any moment you could withdraw your delegation from the president and give it to a congressman or give it to a private business person that you trust more on this issue, or you
Or
know, you
start your own impeachment. I mean, you could start your own new proposal with, you know, in order to gather momentum and you know, it doesn't have to be something that is started by these people that are, you know, these what 500 people that are elected, right? Who, you know, have all sorts of reasons and uh, conflicts of interest for actually, you know, standing up for the things that they're elected to do. And so yeah, I think it would be amazing to be able
it
to.
would reduce lobbying too, I think. I mean, because if all of a sudden, like, because what happens is lobbyists and companies, they come in, they spend a bunch of money to get, you know, on campaigns. And then the things that the voters get, the lobbyists don't vote though, right? It's the voters who voted the people in. And so once you vote the person in, they tell you, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, but then they do, you know, D, which was like, you know, some pharmacy paid them and now they got to answer
Yeah.
their promise to them. So you could easily, like, you see them do that, you see them do D, and you go, oh, okay, I'm out. I'm pulling my delegation from you. I'm moving it somewhere else in real time. That's an interesting concept. It's like direct democracy, but for those who don't feel like they have the expertise, you'll have some people who are hardcore, right? That'll vote on every issue, and they spend all their this is their hobby is like, you know, a backseat or like armchair politician. They're voting on everything, but you'll have, you know, probably the majority of people will be like, I don't understand these issues that well. I'm gonna, you know, give up, you know, most of my voting rights or all of my voting rights to a certain candidate or certain people, you know, and it can move in real time. What an
Yeah.
interesting concept.
But yeah, I mean, to your point, like we do have people that are highly engaged to that point, to the point where one of my things that I like to say both to myself and my other people that are kind of, you know, terminally online and news addicted is it's like they're not asking you your opinion all the time. You know, like you're not getting asked to vote on any of these issues. And it'd be great if you were, but yeah, I think there are some people that, you know, they treat it as this almost second job to be so informed and to, you know, argue this as if it's going to actually, you know, shift the public policy. And unfortunately, you know, we're asked only 2 years and really only 4 years our opinion, and it's a very simple opinion of, you know, left or right. So I think it'd be great to
Yeah.
have more nuanced you know,
And
takes
it
on
might,
all
for
those
some
things.
people, you would still have the option of left or right. You just would delegate whoever the people say, you know, whoever they put in front of you. You could still have the elections the same way they are now, uh, with the caveat that it's not full and complete power at all times, and that it can shift and be fluid and agile and respond to current issues.
Right. And we're doing the experiments now. We're trying to figure out, you know, what are the pain points, what are the creases that you need to iron out in order to actually have a system like that that operates effectively. So
Okay, we
kudos
got
to
three hands
all the
up.
devs. Yeah.
I want to now challenge this concept from the other side, but we got three people here. So, yeah, Joel, do you want to pick someone or anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, let's get Zano in real quick, and then I guess Patriot Sounds, and then we'll jump to Kenton.
Yeah, I just wanted to get on this governance topic because I think just as we were talking about transparency and how you know, governments could use transparent blockchains and we could all track their movements and it would just be a clear system. I think the main issue about this and the proposed governance is that how do we get the government to actually care about this and to actually implement these systems? Because especially if they're using them wager their endless wars. I don't think there is a way to force them other than going to path on resistant taxation and therefore resisting inflation. So I think these things are great and they should be implemented, but the main thing that will actually drive governments to actually be willing to take on this will be if we resist their main method of stealing our money, which is inflation. And feel free to go now, Patrick.
Patriot.
Well, I don't think I'm going to talk about like philosophy around governance and voting. I'm going to kind of sidestep that. I kind of want to go to what you were talking about, Joel, with your point about centralized exchanges and the custody of assets and how this can perpetuate a nation state that can fund war. And I actually think your point is a good one. And this is why I think collectively what we're building, we have to be quite serious about it and we have to nail this. We only get one shot to really design the economic architecture of the world. And if we go down the same path, then it's lost. Yes, I agree. Bitcoin, just to be straight up, I don't even understand what Bitcoin is supposed to be anymore because there's so many different narratives. And I did attend the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas. Thanks to Kenton, actually. Thank you, Kenton. But a little side note there. But I don't know because people, they say, Bitcoin's going to be used for everything. And then some say it's a store of value. And then, when you have realistic observations of like 5 to 7 transactions per second, I mean, it's hopelessly slow. And then people talk about scaling solutions. Well, then if you have a scaling solution, then you have a wrap version of Bitcoin that's custody by a third party. And then you have a similar issue where, let's say you have a gold vault, right? And you have paper gold. And then if you print more paper than you have gold, well, then you obviously have a problem there. And I think that goes to your point, Joel. So I think what we need to do is to get our ethos correct. And I believe the correct ethos is what Thorchain and Maya Protocol and Dash and others are modeling, and that is permissionlessness, privacy, right? And decentralization to the best of our ability. We want to have like as trust minimized as possible. If we can do that, then we're going to accomplish our goal to help destroy the warring nation state because we will deleverage the power from them. Because to your point, Joel, is if there is a centralized custodian of majority of assets, well, then they can rob the purchasing power of those assets, just like they do with fiat, and create the similar design. And with that, I will yield.
I mean, to push back on that, Bitcoin is what it is for different people. Not everyone agrees, and it's not. They're not supposed to agree. This
It's for
isn't
monkey
some like.
JPEGs.
For some people, it is right, and for some people, it's not. And it's. I don't think we should try to push for some like central narrative necessarily, or some central goal. I think letting it evolve in the free market is probably the best thing. And for
Yeah,
me,
that's
it's a
fine.
store of value. But there's some people who live on Bitcoin and use Lightning Network, and there'll be all kinds of other solutions in the future that will be even better, right? That's the great thing about technology. We continue to innovate and solve problems. The Lightning Network has its own issues, but there's people solving those problems. And people will build all new scaling solutions. So I'm not too worried about it. And things evolve over time. Maybe it's a store value to start, and then it becomes a payment thing. Maybe it never becomes a payment thing. Who gives a shit? If the people don't want it to be a payment thing, maybe Dash is better for payments or Litecoin, right? Maybe it doesn't need to be a payment thing.
A little too lackadaisical, I think, on that. I actually think it does matter. It should have some sort of ethos. It should have some sort of defining feature because, I mean, yes, I agree that the free market should decide. I completely agree with that. But being it is the most intrinsic, or not intrinsic, the most valuable crypto, and then you have competing narratives. I think they need to figure it out. I don't know why I should hold Bitcoin. I don't know what it does. And that's a problem, right? You cannot have ambiguity in some ways in the marketplace. Like Thorchain allows
Well, we
you to
all know
swap
what it does.
assets.
Well, we all know one thing that it does and a reason to hold it. I mean, there's lots of reasons that you wouldn't argue against. I mean, the fact that it's gone up more than any other asset for a long time. For some people, that's appealing. For some people, they don't care about that. The fact that you can hold it and know that no matter what happens in the world, no one can take it from you. there's nothing that I have in my life that's like that. My gold was fucking dug up in my backyard by my dad's laborers once, and that was my dad forgot I told him it was there. But Bitcoin is the one thing that I'm confident that no matter what happens, nuclear holocaust, you know, things I won't name because we're in a public forum, but no one's taking my fucking Bitcoin.
Yeah,
So
but
there's
that's
plenty of reasons to hold Bitcoin.
but that value proposition is not unique anymore, right? A lot of cryptos now can't be stolen. They have that same standard. So what is the unique defining quality of Bitcoin? I think that's the most defining issue here. Like, first principle reason, why does it exist? What is it doing? Is it a store of value? Okay, fine. Is it going to be used for payments all over the world? Okay, well then there's glaring problems with that. So you have to figure that out. And I don't think I think we need to come to a conclusion about that. I don't think we can waste time on that, because the market does not like
Yeah,
that
I
time of
don't agree.
ambiguity.
I mean, I think well, the market sure seems to be loving this fucking thing
Well,
for 16 years now.
I
So I
mean,
don't think the ambiguity is stopping us.
that's
This
a
train
super,
don't stop.
well, that's really superficial, because you're having a lot of new entrants into the market. And yes, people like the market. How does the market work? It is a voting machine, right? So you have lots of new trends and crazes and things like that. But then over time, it is a weighing machine, which is more accurate relative to what the technology represents. So yeah, I think we're in the voting phase, but when we get to the weighing stage, it may not work out. Now, it might work out. The problem is, I don't know what it does.
I think you know what it does. I think you just maybe have different opinions of what it should do, or you have other competing things you're into that maybe don't align, or you have different ways of thinking about it. But you know what it does. I mean, it's the most decentralized network in the world. Now, I don't want to get into some argument about some stupid thing about why it might not be, or for payments you have to use Lightning or something. It is the most decentralized network in the world. Anyone making another argument, I mean, it's like, okay, make the argument. It's probably wrong. It is the best store of value in the world for 16 years, right? It's beat everything forever since it's been alive. It is the only digitally native, neutral currency, neutral store of value, neutral money, whatever you want to call it. It is the only neutral thing in the world that countries can truly, credibly believe that this is credibly neutral. It is the money of friends and enemies. There's nothing else in the world like this. There's sure some of these other things can compete on some level, but like let's look at the reality. There's millions of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin has 64% of the entire market cap. The market has decided.
I don't want to. I don't want to repeat myself, so I'm going to yield to another speaker.
Shapeshift intern. How's it going? Did you have something to say?
And by the way, I'm not a Bitcoin maxi. We incubated Polygon. I'm the co-founder of QuickSwap. I'm building a Litecoin layer 2. I love Dash. I've been a fan of Dash for many, many years. Huge fan of Shapeshift. Huge fan of Thor Chain. I'm not a maxi, but I do believe it is the greatest thing we have thus far. Who knows what'll happen in the future, but I'd bet that this is going to stay dominant for a long time. Maybe famous last words, but for now, so far, I've been right since I've been in it for 10 years.
If you
Hey,
like Thorchain, we're friends.
I got my mute button working. Hey, GM, everybody.
Woohoo.
I just want to
Yeah,
say,
by the Eric Voorhees is one of my heroes, and I know he's a big supporter of it. He actually was the first person who told me about Thorchain. I called him like, I don't know, 5 years ago or something. I remember
hey,
I was in
hey,
Hawaii on
Rock.
vacation, and we were sitting.
I
Yeah.
have intermittent reception, and if I go crunchy, just give me the thumbs down and I'll jump down. I just wanted to say, and Patriot can back me on this. I forget where the quote came from, but votes are great, votes are good. It's the power lies in the people that are counting the votes. And Patriot can give me a thumbs up, given that we both suffer under the same governor whose prior job was the state election official. So my initial thing for decentralized blockchain's greatest use case would be actually to make voting true and verifiable again and nullify malfeasance and idiocy. I may be wrong. Thank you.
Now, DB, hey, get your hand up.
Yeah, hey, I couldn't see who the last two speakers were. I don't know, Twitter, you gotta love it. You can't see who's. I think half the people that are talking don't even show a speaker for me, but it is what it is. Anyways, I don't know if you want to keep on this topic. I thought it was interesting. The last two speakers, I 100% agree with both of them on everything they said. I think they're kind of portraying a slightly different point, though. One being the guy preaching Bitcoin, yes, no doubt, the most decentralized, the best there is right now. The only option there really is at this point, is kind of the key thing. I think I follow the. I'm in agreement with Justin Bonds, and I think probably many of us know him, and I think even yourself, Joel, that there's a
Yeah,
good
he's had some
potential.
yelling matches with Rock before too, which are some of the best TV, as it were, on this space.
Oh
But
yeah, I bet. Yeah, he's a pretty. Yeah, I would never want to get in a debate with him. I'll just say that because it's at
And
some point it
he
becomes who
keeps
could be
the same
louder.
energy, like no matter how like I'm very good friends with him, like very close
Yes,
with him and his family, and despite that, he brings that same energy in just basic conversations about things. And so you better know what you're talking about. He's just
100%.
Justin is Justin. What can I say?
Yeah, and
Who was
he's
that? Who was I talking to before? Because yeah, it is a little glitchy. Who was the one that I was kind
Probably
of making a?
Kenton.
Patriot Sounds you were talking to.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I
I
thought so
got
from the
confused.
voice. Thank you.
so that was Patriot and Rock.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and one thing about I don't know who was it, but someone said it's the winner and it'll be the winner, and that's one thing where I like to kind of go against a lot of people that say that. For one, I still think we are unbelievably
I didn't
early to.
say it will be the winner. Just to be clear,
Okay,
I
cool.
did not make that statement. I
Um,
wouldn't make that statement. I can't predict the future.
got it. No, that yeah, that
If
makes
I had
sense.
to bet, I would
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
give it good odds, but I can't say that for sure. Unequivocally, right?
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Even in current market standards, I want to point out that right now we've got $1 billion coin in the top 100 called Fart Coin. So these markets are completely irrational. We can't really go off of what the markets are
Don't
telling
worry,
us
it'll
right
go up in
now.
flames.
Unfortunately, yeah, it's the markets are nuts. Some of the best tech in the entire space is completely hidden, even outside of the top 100 that's been around for years. It's a hype and money pump driven
Farts
space.
are probably though. If you think about it, it probably has Lindy effect because if there's like the funniest joke or the longest standing joke of all time is probably farts, right? Like before humans even had language, they would fart and laugh, right? The cavemen. So
You're not
who
wrong.
knows?
A quick question for you, a totally side topic. 10 years from now, do you still think we're going to see something like that in the top 100? If there is a top
Oh
100.
God. I feel like humor is like consistent, and people like to be like different, and they like to defy the system. So I don't know. I think it's totally possible.
I sure hope not,
I'm
but you
not.
might be
I
right.
don't buy any fart coin or any of this garbage, but more power to them, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I wanted to kind of say is I think I can't disagree with anything that either of the two speakers said. 100% decentralized, the
Actually, you
best
said in
option there
what? You
is,
said in
no
10
doubt.
years.
Yeah.
Did you say in 10 years?
Yeah, sure. Well, hopefully we have a mass
I
adoption in
think
10 years. That's why I'm saying that.
I think for sure. Well, okay, not for sure, but I would bet money that Doge will be in top 100 in 10 years.
Doge, I can see
I,
for
I would
sure.
I would probably bet money on that.
Yeah.
Not a lot of money, but I would bet. I'd put a little money on
Yeah,
that.
I think I'd take that bet too with Doge. Fartcoin, I sure as hell hope not. We'll see. But yeah, that's all I kind of really want to say. And I love to preach how early we are. Even a $3 trillion market cap is pennies compared to where we're going to be. That's why I'm not going to place a bet on if Bitcoin will be the winner, because the true store of value and the top smart contract protocols will likely be, in my opinion, 50 trillion, 100 trillion plus. I mean, if we're really looking at a top 3, top 5 space, which I think it is, I think it's going to be a multi-chain, but not 100 different chain space. So that's, especially when I see Ethereum maxis say that with their $300 billion market cap, that just drives me nuts. I'm very critical of Ethereum and what it's doing right now. I'm not going to get into that, but we're early. Anything could happen. Sorry, Joel.
Yeah, no problem. I did see Aaron popped up as a speaker. Hi, Aaron. Do you want to, kind of a little bit of a spiritual reset then of this? Do you want to just introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, and then no need to make it like a quick binary yes or no, but what do you think? Do you think that crypto is going to be able to stop the endless war state, or you kind of maybe not? What do you think?
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, great. So hi, my name is Aaron Day. I've been in crypto since 2012. Obviously, starting out with Bitcoin. For the last 2.5 years, I really dropped everything that I'm doing to warn people about CBDCs, and actually to the point where I ran for president in the Republican primary just to raise awareness of the issue. Wrote a book called The Final Countdown. I'm a fellow at the Brownstone Institute, and I've been writing articles and doing workshops around the US and now increasingly outside the US, not only warning people about CBDCs, but teaching people how to live on alternative assets. And I've been living on crypto not as long as Joel, but since 2019. And I mean, in general, crypto can stop war, but it certainly needs to be a significant focus on privacy coins, because at this point, what we're now seeing with the Stable and Genius Act, we're actually seeing a backdoor CBDC by the US, which is creating an arms race where other countries are now accelerating their CBDC programs. So we're looking at a situation where there's going to be more digital programmable money. And in the US, it's going to be under, KYC, AML laws, regulated by the Federal Reserve, and used to actually sell treasuries, used to fund the war machine in the United States. That is actually one of the main reasons that everyone from the Treasury Secretary to Trump to our AI crypto czar is out beating the drums, talking about how great stablecoins are. Well, if you like CBDC level surveillance and you want to fund the war machine, then use USDC and Tether.
Damn, what a good point, man. I had not thought about that. Every time you hold or use stable coins that are part of the Genius Act, you're funding war. Jeez.
That's literally it. And in fact, I
Brutal.
mean, as much as so Vivek Ramaswamy read my book, and I actually talked to him about it multiple times. And then he's the one who came out in New Hampshire right before the primary and told Trump to come out against CBDC. So now I'll go to events and people are like, "Oh, you must be excited that Trump is against CBDCs." And I'm like, no, this is actually far worse, because let's say Harris won and implemented a CBDC, there would be resistance to it. There was $27 trillion worth of stablecoin transactions last year. It would take 10 years from scratch to get that with the CBDC. So they're basically capturing stablecoins, which have real use and adoption, and then putting it under control of the United States Congress and the Federal Reserve. And now they're stating that Treasury Secretary said last week, we expect to be able to sell at least $2 trillion worth of treasuries right away because of this. And so that's the main reason. I mean, our debt's been downgraded. We're now passing this big, beautiful bill. China's saying ditch the dollar. And so this is basically they're cashing in on hype, stablecoin hype, to sell treasuries. And so it's a really horrible thing. I would argue, this may be somewhat controversial, but I've been in Bitcoin long enough to remember Bitcoin, not bombs. And
you missed the beginning of the show. I literally kicked it off by using does anyone remember Bitcoin, not bombs?
Okay. Yeah, perfect. I just interviewed Mark Edge on Saturday, and he was actually talking about the whole kind of history behind that. But I would argue that, Bitcoin's not going to be used to stop wars. I mean, we have a Bitcoin strategic reserve now, which was created using civil asset forfeiture or theft, which is going to be growing in size. And I think the probability that the U.S. government is going to hold Bitcoin and then sell it to pay off the debt is significantly less likely than they are to use it as collateral to fund more bombs. So hence, I think crypto can be a solution for this, but we've got to move to privacy coins. We've got to move away from the surveillance state, and we need to do it really quickly.
Damn. Yeah, I mean,
I will.
Can't disagree with some of those. Oh, but Rock might. Here you go, Rock.
Well, No, I generally like am very much in agreement, but I will say it's nuanced, and I will say that I am much more, and maybe this is to your point, maybe they got me, but I'm much more supportive of stable coins than I am of a true CBDC, and I'll explain why. The the way our financial system works in the US is that the government does not have access to our transactions. They can't see what we do. Now, that's changed a bit over time, quite a bit. It's pretty fucked up, actually. But for the most part, they're not supposed to be able to just see everything you do by default. You have to be suspected of a crime. You're innocent until proven guilty. Your transactions are your own. They're just within your bank or your PayPal, which are companies, and they use that info for their own reasons. But the government can't see it unless they subpoena you. Stable coins provide a kind of, it's not the same, but because everybody can see it, unfortunately, even worse on that, in that metric. But it does provide a barrier between government and the currency. Like now, do you think USDC or USDT, especially as they become, crony capitalist, incestually, linked, intertwined to the government, do you trust them to be the middle ground for you that protects you? Probably not. But just to get everyone's brains thinking, at least there is a barrier where the government itself cannot freeze or your assets, but USDC, the company, who will probably try to some extent, like Apple did for their own selfish reasons, to resist government saying, hey, just freeze like infinite wallets or tell us who this money is or whatever. Because if they do that, then people won't want to use them as much. So Apple did, to private companies' credit, once in a while they do things on behalf of the consumer. Actually, I'd argue most of the time, maybe different argument. But anyways, Apple did fight the U.S. government and say, "Hey, we're not turning over, people's identities or their stuff inside their phone, because we just think that's their privacy, that's their right." So Apple fought that pretty hard, I think, and there were some back and forths. But anyways, I'll pause there.
Well, I mean, I don't really think we have financial privacy currently. I mean, I've identified 13 different federal government programs that are involved. If you read the terms and service of your bank account, one of the terms of service is that they can sell or share your data with third parties without your consent, and in fact, they frequently do that. So, I mean,
To governments, do you know? Are they doing that to governments outside of subpoenas?
Well, yeah, there's already bulk data collection through the NSA. There's all kinds of things. I'll give you an example of how, I mean, money's already digital, right? It's 96% digital, but there's something called a suspicious activity report where if you do a transaction greater than $10,000, a report automatically gets sent to the Treasury Department. Well, the Treasury Department just decided, I think 6 or 8 weeks ago, based on, Trump wanting to crack down on illegal immigration, that they changed it so that for 30 zip codes in California and Texas, they reduced the threshold from $10,000 to $200.
Are you serious? How did I not hear that? Holy shit.
I mean, it literally was an edict directly from the Treasury Department. It wasn't even something that was passed by Congress. And so I would argue
what's messed up is that's not the first time, by the way. The default is that the number keeps going down because of inflation, right? When they started this, I don't know when they started, but I think it was a long time ago, that 10,000 was, maybe a lot of money. Now 10,000 ain't that much money anymore. And it just keeps slowly, these numbers that they use keep getting worse because of inflation. And now they just dropped it to 200. That's scary.
Yeah,
and no one fought back on this?
No one fought back, and I think most people don't even know about it. They don't even know about the suspicious activity reports. Look, they can actually issue something called a national security letter, where if they come in and say they shut down your bank account and issue one of these national security letters, you can't talk to anybody about it, including a lawyer. I mean, and so these are things that already exist within the system today. So
how could there be something where you can't talk to your lawyer? You're suspected of a crime, are you saying?
Well, yeah, you may be suspected of a crime, but you actually don't even have the ability to advocate on your behalf. I mean, we really don't. I don't want to go into a whole situation about how far gone the Constitution is, but a friend of mine, Ladar Levison, actually, created a private mail service, and I believe it was Edward Snowden or Assange. I get those mixed up, but was using his service, and so this actually the government came in and did this to him. They tried to subpoena all of his records, and then they told him he couldn't talk to anybody about it, including a lawyer. And so that obviously wasn't explicitly related to money or financial transactions, but it is all national security letters are also used related to financial transactions. I wrote an article about this, and I gave a couple of examples. There's one guy who actually fought it and won, but for the most part, you wouldn't know if anybody had a national security letter because the people aren't allowed to talk about it. It's kind of like the
And they're
invention of
doing it in the name of national security, which some might go, well, hey, if there's a terrorist or there's an attack about to happen, yeah, we shouldn't, let someone go to their lawyer. What if it gets out? But the problem is then they just use it for other things. And this is exactly what happened with the Patriot Act.
It's exactly what happened with the Patriot Act. And all of the stuff that we're talking about, if you look at the history of financial surveillance, prior to 1970, there was nothing. And then we had the Bank Secrecy Act, which is what in 1970, which was designed to fight organized crime, which put in place the first of kind of the anti-money laundering laws. And then if you look at the history of this, it's only gotten worse. Then we got the Patriot Act, but then we got the CARES Act. And so even COVID caused an increase in financial surveillance. And so it keeps on getting worse and worse. And so now I would argue with the stablecoin legislation, it's designed to capture Tether and USDC. I think it's going to force, based on the regulatory burden and the reporting requirements, it's probably going to force a consortium of banks. It was announced that Citi, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and B of A announced that they're going to jointly pursue a stablecoin. But I wouldn't be surprised if, because of this legislation, they end up jointly acquiring Tether. Because think about Tether, going back to this whole idea that it's being used to sell treasuries. Not that Tether's ever passed an audit, and we're not even going to talk about the fact that our Commerce Secretary's firm invested $600 million into Tether and manages all of the treasuries through Cantor Fitzgerald. We'll skip that part of the corruption cycle on this. Tether, by their own admission, is backing their currency by 100,000 Bitcoin and some pretty large amount of gold. Well, that will be disallowed based on this legislation. So they're going to be forced to.
Not necessarily. Yes, you're totally correct, and I kind of hate that about this bill. But if it's over collateralized, they could still, I believe, hold those things as long as they have the equal amount. Like, so with their profits, they can hold those things.
Sure. That is a workaround, but and again, we don't even know. I mean, on two separate occasions,
They claim they have more. They do claim that they have more than they have more assets than they have stablecoin now.
They do. They've never passed an audit, and twice they've been found to not have enough assets to back it. But hey, maybe it's possible. But I mean, are they over collateralized to the tune of 100,000 Bitcoin and whatever the amount of gold? I can't imagine that they're over collateralized that amount. But the bottom line is this: this is a backdoor way of capturing all of this transaction volume, and they're going to put it under the control of Congress. Part of the issue becomes, people say, well, it's the central bank. I talked to Ted Cruz at one point, and he actually put in some legislation where he was trying to make the argument that he wanted to preemptively stop the Federal Reserve from issuing a CBDC without congressional approval, which, by the way, is not a thing. No one was ever doing that. But when you look at all of the financial surveillance, like to your point about the fact that, well, maybe Circle will push back or maybe Tether will push back like Apple did, the Federal Reserve isn't the one pushing all of this surveillance. All of the surveillance that I just mentioned was actually passed by Congress. And in this case, Ted Cruz himself actually signed some of the legislation that added financial surveillance. Yet he's out there in public saying, I'm going to put together this bill to preemptively stop a CBDC so that we can protect Americans from having their financial transactions surveilled. So it's a pretty bad situation. And if you look at the history of this, we've never reversed course. There's never been a period where we gave people back their financial privacy. It only goes in one direction, regardless of what the emergency is. I mean, why would COVID lead to enhanced financial surveillance? And so, actually, for that matter, why did 9/11 lead to so much additional financial surveillance? So I view Stable and Genius as being something that, again, it captures something that's popular and puts it under all of this control. And it's not long before, I mean, you can see a scenario where Circle and Tether end up being acquired by existing banks, and then they pass another bill that says, it has to be programmable.
Man, you're really I follow this issue closely. I've done like so many Twitter Space and podcasts on this Genius bill and all this stablecoin stuff, and you're really helping me, I think, not recalibrate, but like recalibrate to my what I always used to say, and I still say this, but you're making me think more deeply about it. I think for a lot of us, like similar to how we've Trojan horsed the government with Bitcoin and a lot of this stuff by, they didn't think it could compete. They thought it was a joke. It wasn't worth their time, whatever. We Trojan horse it slowly. I've always said that about Bitcoin. And now there's senators with it. Now there's big, companies with it, et cetera. But now this Trojan horsing us with these stable coins. It's a good point, because why do we accept it, the public, that we're largely, we're crypto voters, right? Half of all campaign donations were crypto people. Why are we accepting this? And not only accepting, but most people I know are rooting for it, even very smart people in the industry, is because it gives us the acceptance we're looking for, right? It makes us legitimate. It makes the world know that we, crypto people as a conglomerate, are not criminals anymore, But you're right. I mean, the more people use this, the more we recreate the old system. And I will say, I've always said, stable coins, because they're pegged to the dollar and they still exhibit inflation and all of the bad things of the dollar, and they can be frozen. They are just a temporary solution. I think the solution is most likely, for the time being, Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin it has too much volatility, and it doesn't have unit of account yet. But I think in time, especially as these stable coins get co-opted, hijacked by the government, I think that people will realize, oh shit, once they get their money seized, or they start hearing their friends getting their money seized or whatever, some government rules that they have to do a bail-in, like in, Cyprus, then people will go, oh shoot, you know what? Why was I not just holding Bitcoin in the first place? But it needs to get more stable, and it needs better payment infrastructure, and then it needs unit of account eventually. That's the end game.
Well, I mean, again, I
For
think
me.
Bitcoin has the same surveillance problems as a CBDC at this point, which is highly problematic. I think people are not aware of. A lot of people used to say, well, I only transact in small amounts, and so I don't need to worry about chain analysis. I don't think people are aware. I've had 3 different scenarios in the last 90 days where people came to me because they either had a dispute with a business partner, or were in a divorce case. And so there's now a whole network of private investigators that actually get certification in chain analysis. And so if they can get one public key, they put it into a shared database where they're pulling the transactions cumulatively out of the exchanges. But you're not even safe if you did a peer-to-peer transaction and never touched an exchange, because let's say you did a P2P transaction with somebody that was targeted by the government, and the government said, hey, well, turn over who your counterparties are and we'll give you a reduced sentence, because that kind of thing certainly happens. And so they're continuing to map out all of Bitcoin. And so I think that's problematic. I don't know how Bitcoin becomes an alternative, because what we're really facing here more globally is technocracy, and a movement where the idea is to have a digital currency that's tied to social credit systems where scientists and engineers are essentially dictating our decisions for us, because that is ideologically where things are moving. And so one of the things that I like is a privacy coin called Freedom Dollar. I don't know if anybody talked about that yet. Also FUSD. It's a privacy stable coin that's algorithmic and backed by over-collateralized Xano. It's not backed by treasuries. So you get the benefit of it not being something that can be seized or frozen. And it's also something that's not being used to fund the warfare state. But to your point about, people pushing these things, and allegedly smart people pushing stablecoins because it's about acceptance, I always go back to just the original Bitcoin white paper. The whole premise of this was peer-to-peer digital cash with no third parties and no central authorities. And now we have stablecoins, which are based on fiat with like 15 levels of technical risk and surveillance. I don't think that you could have something further from what cryptocurrency was supposed to be than a stable coin. I think it's the opposite of adoption.
It's got the best of it's got some of the best features of crypto. It's fast and interoperable, and it's got all the best features of government money.
Well, I'll tell you. So one thing that's funny, so we're in this situation with Trump where it's like we have these trade wars and we're fighting against China and all of this, ridiculousness. And so what are we doing? We're pushing stable coins. What's the largest stable coin? Tether. What chain is used to mint the most Tether? Tron. Who controls Tron? A Chinese national, Justin Sun, where there are 26 nodes that basically control that network. And I can't prove it for sure, but there are a lot of people that seem to think that Sun may control the majority of the power of Tron. So how funny is it that we're pushing for a digital stable token to sell treasuries that actually could be backdoor controlled by the Chinese government? But even if it's not the Chinese government, let's look at Justin Sun, who invested 30 million into World Financial, the Trump family DeFi play, and then he's the single largest holder of the Trump meme coin. He invested $75 million in that. I mean, I look at this stuff again, I don't want to make this all about politics, but because I stopped voting years ago. But in this particular situation, people complain about, oh, Hunter Biden was on the board of directors of a Ukrainian oil company. I mean, compare that to what I just described, what's going on with stable coins and Justin Sun and all of these insider dealings with the Trump family, or the fact that USDC, Brian Brooks was the acting comptroller in Trump's Treasury Department the first term. And then he left there to become the chief legal officer at Coinbase, where he shaped the USDC roadmap with Circle. So it's just the tentacles here are all over the place in terms of insider deal between Howard Lutnick and all of this other stuff. It actually stinks.
Yeah, it's kind of brutal. Any of you guys with the hands up have something to chime in on that?
No. I have something else I want to chat about.
Yeah, why don't you go in that direction? You go in all directions today.
Sure. I was actually bringing it back to what was something you said earlier about majority of crypto held in custodians, not in self custody, and I agree that's a problem. That's definitely a fly in the ointment from my point of view.
Well,
and it
I
is
think,
actually.
can we just be clear about if we're going to say things, the facts? So it is not, I don't know about per user, but per just size, most crypto is not on centralized exchanges or in centralized custody. There's different
Okay, good.
numbers online. I mean, a quick Grok or Google will give any numbers anywhere from like 15
I'll
to
look that up right now in
40%
comments.
is centralized and the rest not. I looked it up a few times earlier when we were talking.
Okay,
But
good.
yeah,
Because
if we could find some more, maybe some clear data, maybe you can either confirm what I'm saying or deny, Joel. But yeah, go ahead.
But I agree, self custody is key to changing the way things work, and is one of my concerns about the next 80%, of the S adoption curve coming into crypto. Unfortunately, I think a lot of them don't want self custody. So I think that's something the industry needs to solve. It needs to make self custody easier. And it's also why I'm so into Thorchain and passionate about it, is I feel like Thorchain is doing a really helping enable self-custody. So yeah, I do think it's important. And then I wanted to touch on you guys talking about voting and voting like in a political democracy, like it doesn't work. It's just tyranny of the mob. And the reason is because you can't unsubscribe. So like someone mentioned, if you voted for Trump for reason XYZ and now he's doing ABC, you can't unsubscribe. You can't withdraw your votes. You're stuck with them for the next 4 years, right? Whereas in a market democracy, which we all are a part of, that exists, your vote is with your dollars. And every day, every other day, when you vote and spend your dollars, you're voting for what businesses you want to exist. And the ones you don't spend your money at is you're indirectly voting for them not to exist. And you go to a restaurant, you get food poisoning, you unsubscribe. You never go there again. You're not stuck with them for 4 years. You're not forced to fund them for 4 years, right? So a market democracy, you can unsubscribe. The majority of people might want that restaurant to exist, but you can decide, no, I don't want to go along with it. Whereas in a political democracy, if a majority wants something to exist, they get it. The minority can't unsubscribe from that. And that's where the tyranny comes from. So so money is our real true vote. And that's how we will, a society can decide, absence of government as we know it today, this is how a free society would decide what would exist and what doesn't. Is what they vote with their dollars, what businesses they want to exist or not. And so I kind of want to take this in a bit further. The concept of the idea of polymarket came up with, what if the government put on, voting odds for invading a country or something like that. It made me think of like dead pools or assassination pools. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but basically you can have a prediction market on if a person, an individual, how long they're going to live, or will they die tomorrow, or something like that. And I wonder if, people can then vote with their dollars on who they want to die. And then that might incentivize somebody to actually carry it out. And so maybe war as we know it changes, but maybe it gets a bit more dystopian. Maybe the major conflicts end, but now we've got groups of people targeting individuals to be assassinated, and somehow they can make it profitable. So I'm just throwing that out there to stir the conversation.
I think you made some good points there. And before I introduce Sal, because he just popped up here, hi Sal. That's kind of, in my view, because obviously we have the simplistic view, which is crypto will end wars and a lot of this bad stuff because no money printer and no confiscating ability. And then of course went to the bearish take, which is, kind of a lot of that's naive a little bit. But at the end of the day, the positive take is the optionality. It's not that we get to vote or that the networks are decentralized necessarily. It's that we can just do a different one, just choose a different one. And so, for example, like, again, let's not turn it in like the Bitcoin hijack type debate thing, but for the purposes I was using Bitcoin in 2016, when I closed my bank account and started entirely living off of crypto, it kind of got rugged for a little bit where it's much more difficult to use Bitcoin as money, at least non-custodially, at least for me, even today than it was in 2016. But that didn't stop me because there were so many other cryptos out there at the time, like there's Litecoin, there's Dash, there's things like that. Bitcoin Cash popped out pretty soon. Monero has in the last few years got like up to speed. Of course, Xano's here, just there's so many options so that now Bitcoin not functioning as the peer-to-peer digital cash people thought it was in the beginning isn't as big of a deal because you could just use something else. And
what were you mentioning about Monero? If I could ask you to double click on it. I love Monero, but
basically what I just said is it's now getting like up to speed to where it's like usable, because in the early days, like even in 2017 or so, or 2018, I don't remember the year, but they still had like a command line wallet as far as what people
yeah, there was no GUI.
Yeah, they struggled to have like mobile adoption and things like that.
I remember the first GUI. I was excited about that.
Yes, and so I'm saying it's like now it's like a viable thing to actually use. And so
what did they do though? When I'm saying double click, can you do you know what did they do, some upgrades or what happened?
I think it's just a lot of engineering and things. A lot of the cryptocurrencies, like they're Bitcoin based. Bitcoin has a very elegant kind of code based type design, and a lot of them are just sort of Bitcoin based, like Litecoin and Dash, things like that are kind of code based forks with modifications. So it's just easier to add. From what everyone has told me, again, I'm not a coder, I can't say this. I'm sure the Edge people, because they've actually, I think, are one of the first people to integrate Monero into the wallet. Would probably know a lot more about this, but everyone I've talked to in depth has said that it was kind of a nightmare to integrate, at least for a while. But now when that enough demand was there, that people actually kind of did the work, and now they integrated it. But anyway,
this is what I always say about all of these things. I mean, it's like when Aaron, you were mentioning, that the chain analysis stuff with Bitcoin, and now Joel's mentioning the Monero improving or whatever. Somewhere or another, humans find ways to solve problems, and there's lots of debate about should it happen at L1 or L2 or whatever. Or other ways at the wallet level. Like I'm talking to David Chaum right now about building quantum resistance at the wallet level, not even at the chain level. So my point is just that humans are good at solving these kind of problems. And if we put confinements on things, we'll find ways to solve them. And I am happy about Monero. I love Monero. And by the way, just saw it like, I guess one of the ways you can prove adoption is price, just because the more people that have it, the higher the price goes. Not exactly, right? But Monero, man, it's been ripping for the last, like, I don't know, what, year or more? It's been great.
Yeah, for sure.
I
But
don't think a lot of people hold Monero for that, but
part
I
of
won't
it,
state whether I hold or don't hold Monero
part of
for
it,
obvious
I
reasons.
should say,
But I never, if I ever did hold it, again, not that I do or don't, I never held it for money reasons, for like go up
I
reasons.
think it's interesting though. Like we mentioned, the whole Bitcoin Cash bank run that's been kind of happening relatively recently, but Monero, I guess without, got kind of forced into that situation by getting kicked off a lot of exchanges, and I think that had something to do with the price going up. If I were to speculate, it's just that getting rid of the paper Monero kind of thing, that probably.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, that's a speculation. I've rambled enough. Maybe Sal, do you want to go introduce yourself, say who you are, what you do, and then say, do you think that crypto can stop the endless warfare state?
Shoot, actually, I have one more comment. Can I add one more
Sure,
thing
sure. Come on. Add one more.
before we go on from that topic? That reminded me of something you said earlier. Oh, yes. So, we're talking about like Bitcoin becoming like either rehypothecated or, could governments build? We actually talked, I think, on this Spaces maybe the last week, or maybe it was another Spaces, but about like basically, can government create like debt and bonds just against their Bitcoin holdings and stuff? But my question is MicroStrategy, with what it's doing, and I generally support MicroStrategy. I prefer people hold their normal Bitcoin, and I think all these companies actually could end in a very bad disaster. Some of them are getting very dangerous and they're over leveraging, whatever. But anyways, is MicroStrategy a form of paper Bitcoin? I mean, it's obviously a custodial Bitcoin, but like if you actually think about it, is it paper or is it a fractional reserve, or what exactly? What is it that we might not be seeing? Because the fact is, it trades at 110 or 106 billion market cap, but they've only got 60 billion of Bitcoin. So you can argue, well, it's a company, and and company has a growth premium built into it. Or you could argue it's a fractional reserve or something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
If no one has a comment, we could just go to the intro of the next person. But I just thought it was an interesting thought I had earlier, and you reminded me of it.
Yeah, so many such cases in this space. My brain is on constant overload for all these ideas floating
Yeah.
around. Just is what it is. I forget everything. Sal, are you able to touch the unmute button and tell people about who you are and your perspective on this top level subject here?
I am indeed. What's up, guys? I'm sorry I'm late. I know I'm just hopping in now. I'm not really sure where the conversation was.
Just
I'm just kind
warming
of
up.
okay. Perfect. Yeah. So I mean, can crypto stop wars? I think some cryptos can. That's the truth of it. And what cryptos can is going to be determined by which cryptos function as peer-to-peer cash. The whole idea is to disintermediate the banking cartel, and that's not done with something like a speculative asset. Like the banking cartel has one product and one product only, and that's exchange media. We're not going to run up in the Fed, guns drawn. Like it's not going to happen like that. We're not going to vote them out. Hell, we can't even get a bill to audit the Fed passed, let alone a bill to end the Fed. All right, so we have to make them obsolete the same way that Netflix made Blockbuster obsolete. We can only do that by having a better product. Again, their only product is exchange media, so we need a more efficient medium of exchange. So that means certain things. It has to function. Like it has to be, the transactions have to be quick. They have to be cheap. They have to be fungible, which is something that I think we're all just kind of, at least speaking for myself, it's just something that I'm only coming to terms with now. For a very long time, I thought that pseudonymity would suffice, but I look at what the persecution of good people like Roger Ver and Ian Freeman and Alexei Pertsev and Roman Stormer, and the list goes on and on and on. All that has taught me, and the SEC's persecution of different institutions in the crypto space, all of that has taught me that pseudonymity is not sufficient. We need privacy. We need fungibility. Surprise, Rothbard and Mises were right again, right? We should have paid attention the first time we read what has government done to our money, or a theory of money and credit, but better late than never, I guess. So I think it can, but I don't think all of them can. I don't think it's going to happen from BTC, certainly. It's not going to happen from any of these chains that don't really function as exchange media. It's going to come from, who knows, a chain that might not even be around today. But right now my bet is on the privacy coins like Xano and Firo, Monero, PivX, Pirate Chain, something like that. I'm not saying it's going to be those chains, but it's going to be something that looks like those chains. It's going to one day hopefully do it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And Aaron was definitely commenting on that, the surveillance, especially in like divorce court and things like that, where people's supposedly private crypto stashes get outed. But
Right.
also, so before, I can't remember if I was chatting with Rock about this earlier on the space, but about the percentage of crypto on exchanges. I just asked Grok real quick how to think on it, and it says 20 to 30% of all cryptos on exchanges or with custodians, which I think is it's not like a terminal number, but it's not a good one. It should be like a small percentage, in my humble opinion.
That's far lower than I would have suspected, to be honest with you.
Well, that's great then,
I mean, Grok gave me one number as low as 11%, but I asked it in a bunch of different ways and asked it like, a bunch of different things. But maybe that's don't take that. I think that our number is probably closer to 30 from all the different answers I saw.
It says it estimates Bitcoin specifically has a lower percentage on exchanges, and it says 10
interesting.
to 15%. So
I feel like
I would have thought Bitcoin would have more because of the ETFs and all that.
I think
but that's interesting.
Trending. If I were to guess, just purely guess, there's no data behind this, I would guess it's trending higher, but also it's relatively because a lot of people buy and hold Bitcoin for like buying and holding. And a lot of people there's a lot of degens out there who want alts for a quick flip. And so they probably have them on exchanges so they could do that real fast to, kind of get it going. Or maybe to facilitate trading, you need a higher percentage of their market cap in liquidity on these exchanges. It could also be that Bitcoin's been around for so long that so high a percentage of the coins is like perma hodl. It's lost. Like someone's dead, they lost the keys.
True.
And so that's like, oh, it's self custody, but it's kind of doesn't exist.
Right.
What I'd really like to see is how this looks after introducing another rabbit hole here, but like the quantum computing thing. After that happens, how many dead coin addresses are going to start to get vacuumed up, and then the whole equation kind of gets turned on its head. Will be fun to see.
Well, it's interesting.
That's a whole fun one that I've been diving deep into with David Chaum recently.
Everybody talks about
it's hard
about how quantum computing is going to crack the cryptography behind the blockchain and whatever. But whenever there's a new technology, the government uses it against us, but we use it against the government more efficiently because they're just not good at anything that they do. So we can have the conversation about like quantum, cracking of the blockchain, whatever. But I'm also interested in quantum resistant blockchains, right? And I think we're gonna use that same technology to create even more powerful blockchains that they have no possibility of cracking. So there's definitely some like threats there, but I'm generally speaking excited about quantum computing and what that's going to do for crypto.
Yeah, kind of like the Y2K thing, where everyone thought it was gonna, for those of us who are old enough, at least, everyone thought it was gonna end everything, and it ended up being nothing because I guess people upgraded and were prepared. Although that's kind of funny.
Turn your computers off.
Raise your hand or say something if you were born 2000 or past. Anyone here? Because Shapeshift has a hand up, I'm going to assume. No, he thumbs down it. No, I know a lot of people, unfortunately.
Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Can I steal the mic for a minute?
Yeah, why not?
But it's It's willfully given, so I don't want to participate in theft. I just think that from the get-go, we should just establish a matter of fact, and then we can, like adults, debate our differences to achieve peace. And I need to make first off, I need to make a flagrant plug for Shapeshift, whose initial idea was to separate money from state. And I think that's been achieved through decentralization, through DeFi. And I would be remiss if I did not say, Aaron, I admire and appreciate your efforts, and I wanted to publicly recognize you and thank you and encourage you to never stop being free. Now, let's suppose Satoshi had enough foresight and brilliance that his product would be identified as a threat and treated as such. And I argue that, in fact, we have proof that it has been, and Bitcoin's been under attack since always. And at first, they laugh at you and all the saying and all that. But same goes for the internet. So I wanted to also something to levy against the normies. I know decades ago in evidentiary disclosure, not involving anything I was involved in, but they had the wherewithal, once the magnetic strips were in the money, in the paper money, and or before just the serial numbers, they could identify you have 80 grand of cash underneath the third rose bush underneath your bedroom window. So anonymity is effectively a pipe dream, and we should act as such. That's why I'm wholeheartedly into the freedom to diversify through decentralized finance permissionlessly. And I think I also need to do a naked plug on, please, when you guys ask Grok or whatever else, do a compare and contrast with Venice.ai and see if the unsent private version has any difference. Thanks for having me. And Sal, big thumbs up on you, man. You're a killer. I admire you greatly as well. Good day, you guys. Go towards peace.
Yeah, thanks for chiming in, and thanks, Sal, for leaving the speaker zone. I guess we heard enough of you. But it maybe just got rugged. Has anyone else not said anything recently that needed to get something in? Just might be a good reset point.
Well, we have not heard from Nerd Girl for a while. I hate to call her out, but
Literally.
when people don't speak for a while, I get intrigued like a curious cat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, is she busy recording another Pump Metals video or something? I mean, so yeah.
No, I had an idea for one yesterday. I was working on something, but no, I've just been listening to you guys. You guys have got more to say than I do. Did you hear me?
Yes, we
Am I
heard
right?
you. No,
Okay, you heard me.
you're not
All
rugged.
right.
You were heard.
Okay.
But yeah, I just also want to give a shout out to Cody of Layer 1X, who was here earlier, because he suggested some pretty interesting solution that could really help us with the spaces in the future. But anyway, something I thought was kind of interesting, maybe to help refocus the conversation a little bit, squeeze it for a little bit more juice. I posted somewhere in the Jumbotron. There's so many things shared to this space this time. A very think-heavy space, but basically about actionable things to sort of start reducing the control over the money by the powers that be, to be able to basically lessen the impact of the money printer. And one thing that I kind of would like to posit, a lot of this conversation is very US centric, of course, and because the US drops a lot of bombs, and a lot of people here, a lot of crypto users are also in the US. One of the biggest, I would say, barriers people have cited when they really want to get into using crypto as daily money is people don't want to deal with like the capital gains reporting for it. It's some of it is the actual paying the taxes, but also like the reporting. There are a few things, like for example, the Dash Pay wallet has a very easy export a CSV kind of auto option that just lets you just do everything, and it's not that big of a deal. But one thing I should also point out is the sort of the effects that has on like the money printer, as opposed to if you have all your spending money, let's just say, in fiat, then every time the government prints money, they take value from you from that fiat, and then they use it to fund wars, etc. Now, if you have all your spending in crypto directly in a scarce crypto, again, not a proto CBDC or whatever these the stable coins are these days. If you have it in that, then if you have it not in that, in an actual scarce crypto, and you spend it there, as long as you can deal with the paperwork. So if you trigger if you have to pay capital gains on that, that means that the capital gains is the money savings over the money printer. And so the escaping the printer margin, I should say. If that happens, you pay some of it. So you don't escape as much of it as you do escape, but these are for the people who pay taxes. Those who don't, do whatever you want. But you escape some of it still. Even when after you pay capital gains, you don't pay 100% rate on your capital gains. You pay less than that. So you still get to keep more of your money, begrudge the money printer some of it. And if it goes down, you actually have capital losses, you lose the money anyway. But if you can write that out, again, none of this is like tax advice, right? By the way, you should look into a tax attorney. But the point is, this is something that I know that people have done. And if you write those off as losses, like you still lose the money, but instead of the government gets them, no one gets them. So either way, you begrudge the printer a little bit by doing that. And then the printer inflates the value of a smaller and smaller group of people, of hodlers, to where eventually it becomes unsustainable. The reason the money printer works so well is because it socializes the cost of warfare on a massive number of people and a massive global economy. But if you get the holders of USD value way down, then those people get very sharply affected, and they start to complain, they start to dump their dollars, etc. And then you can't really use that mechanism to fund war anymore. Just a thought. Anyone have anything to add on that point?
No, I don't know. I don't. Kenton, do you? I was curious. Maybe you were thinking about that.
Not directly. I mean, I moved to Cayman Islands to stop paying taxes, and it was quite like. And I always tell people, it isn't just to have more money in my pocket; it's so I can stop financing the war machine. And man, the looks on people's face, and then the smarter ones don't take it as an indirect insult because they're paying tax, so they're financing the war machine. But I voted with my feet, so I don't have to, do any, cartwheels and whatever to avoid it. I can do it all legally now.
That's why I peer pressured you to speak, because I knew you were going to say something like that.
But I'll admit, it's not for everyone. I mean, it's tough. It's a hard lifestyle, to be honest, because like you're still leaving family and friends and culture and everything you're used to, right? The Cayman's great. There's nothing. Actually, if anything, it's just boring here. But it is if you're going to move, just stop paying taxes. It's a big leap. It's a big jump.
Yeah, for sure. Which is kind of why I gave like the safest possible solution kind of thing, where if you are still a full U.S. tax paying whatever, you still pay direct war taxes. The inflation tax, there's ways of like significantly lessening that by just using scarce crypto. Of course, the trade-off is that the annoyance of fluctuations and things like that. The volatility is like if you had like let's not talk about like a proto CBDC. Let's talk about like the Freedom Dollar or something like that, which any algo or over collateralized stablecoin, any decentralized stablecoin is way better than dollars or a centralized stablecoin, of course. I say that that's like a tool for people who that's what they need. That's their option. Like if you need a certain amount, you cannot afford the volatility. But if you can afford the volatility, I would say deal with it, right? Because that really brings the fiat valuation out of the equation completely, and really starts to lessen volatility of your currency of choice, of course, but also it de-exposes you to fiat as a whole. And I have to say, like, de-exposure to fiat is not necessarily always like a fantastic financial choice like practically speaking, like short term or midterm. But it's the entire reason I got into crypto. Like I tell people that Peter Schiff got me into crypto because I was always a gold and silver bug. And when he had that Bitcoin backed debit card, I'm like, oh, you mean I can just not have anything denominated in fiat and only gold? This is awesome. It's so it kind of got me on that path there.
Wait, Peter
But
Schiff had a Bitcoin backed debit card?
no, a gold debit card. It
Oh,
was Union
I thought.
Pacific, and
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
was just many years ago. I was looking into that, and then when I heard about crypto, I was just like, this is way more efficient than when I was trying. But yeah, the point is like I get that the gold and silver is a lot less, volatile than crypto, but like lest we forget during the Brexit, Bitcoin I probably used more for payments back then. It was more stable than the British pound during that time. So I have priced goods and services in various cryptos, both as far as like pay me this for this work, or I have viewed things as a cost in that as well. I viewed how much I have because I don't have fiat valuations. I just have various cryptos. So that's like what I own. And so it's not an entire repricing. I still think of a lot of things in like dollar pricings as far as like how much does this cost, how much do I afford, but it's kind of I'm already starting to move away from the dollar as a unit of account, not intentionally, just like it's as a natural consequence of only having scarce cryptos. And I think that it's not that like if you are a paycheck to paycheck kind of a person, it might be a little challenging. But if you're not, if you have any kind of cushion, I would recommend some people just trying to use the volatile, I won't say volatile specifically, but a scarce non-fiat unit of account for transactions. I think just give it a shot for a while and just see what it does.
Yeah, I mean, when you do it, you definitely get into periods of you only spend when the price is up, and then you learn how to minimize your burn rate otherwise. I mean, I've been doing this for quite some time as well, and it's actually kind of it is an interesting exercise, and it has the other benefit of sometimes when you have a down year, you actually don't have any capital gains tax or any tax at all.
I mean, I do that. I don't spend crypto like day to day. Other than like sometimes using, and I'm not even doing it right now, but in the past using like the old Coinbase Shift card or the Crypto.com card that I found out had all these high fees, or you can use your Coinbase uh, debit card now, and the newer Coinbase debit card, and if you convert USDC, it's free and stuff. So I don't do that. I'm not doing that right now for various
Peter.
reasons. What's that? What was that? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. There's just some
Okay.
background noise or something.
Oh,
And I thought that you were listening for that.
let me close my door. It's Cindy on a call with some directors in Hollywood or something. But so what I was saying is I do actually though think about like when crypto is up, I cash out, I'll spend more. So I'm still converting to dollars usually. But I still am thinking about like my life in crypto, right? So when like right now I'm spending less generally in life. I'm not buying anything big, because I'm thinking, I consider crypto down right now in general, or like down from what I think it should be at soon. So I'm always, every year I think like that. In a up year, then I'm more likely to go do, uh, like, I don't know, buy a new car or something, right?
That's
Yeah.
kind of one of the biggest benefits to using crypto that I found that nobody ever talks about, and that's changing your time preference, right? Hans Hoppe spoke about this. How if you're you assume that your money's going to be worth more tomorrow, you're more likely to save and plan for the future. And a non-inflationary society has less drug use, less promiscuity. It has more people again saving for the future, so there's more capital. There's more businesses, more business owners.
Hey
There's
man, are we
more
trying to
wealth.
convince people to use crypto or not use it? You said less drugs and promiscuity. I'm just kidding. I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Well,
Kind of.
that's kind of the point, though. I found that, like, like when I was like a degenerate in college, learning about crypto, and I just wanted to, like, get away from the banks. Like, my life changed dramatically for the better because my time preference changed. So I think that's like a huge kind of aspect of kind of related to what you and Aaron were just saying.
It's another interesting thing. During the 2019, I guess, so era, 2018, 2019, there was a massive onboarding of merchants to accept Dash in the Caracas, Venezuela area. And of course, it was a local group of people that ended up working on the onboarding there. They later ended up working on the Bitcoin adoption in El Salvador a couple of years later. But the point is, I came in contact with a lot of Venezuelans and talked to them about their day of life and like how to specifics of onboarding and all this kind of stuff. And it was just wild to me that people used for their day-to-day purchases the Bolivar when it would crash like a 10% every day. So the money is like rotting faster than those fresh picked strawberries that your missus forced you to go out and pick your own fruit day on the hottest day of the year because she thought it'd be fun. It's like rotting faster than that, and but people are just still using it as money. They're figuring it out somehow. Like first of all, they just got rid of cash because eventually, like, the logistics of piles of paper just didn't work out, and so it was all electronic. But then you just like get paid, and then you just shovel it off to the next person as fast as you can. And so you're not exposed to like insane losses necessarily in the short term that you can see, but I'm sure over the aggregate you can kind of see that. And then of course, before it got really hyperinflating like that, you did have people who the smarter people would take out longer and longer term loans all the time, kind of like if you have like a 30+ year mortgage in the US, you're sort of shorting the dollar by doing that. And obviously you're doing it by holding scarce crypto assets and gold and stuff like that as well. But the people with the longer time horizon would just kind of do that, and then they'd be fine. But then it's like the everyday person that is just, being paid in bolivares and then spending it immediately, and just in that constant cycle of like not able to save is just like bad. And I think that it's definitely like we talk about like there's a greater philosophical point maybe about like consumerism. A lot of consumerism probably has to do with the incentive to just spend the money that you have when you have it, because saving isn't necessarily viewed as smart. And probably if you get to wait, the time window of your spending grows, then you get to decide what you have a greater optionality in what you spend that on. Therefore, you prefer higher quality goods and services because you don't have to just spend this right now. Zano, I think you might have an Argentinian perspective on this, right?
Yeah, I just want to share a real case a scenario of that happening. So, as some people know, Argentina has been going down in inflation. So we used to have 25% inflation per month, and now we're down to less than 2%, which is still quite a lot.
My man,
But
actually 1.5. Actually,
yeah,
this
what
last report.
yeah, right.
So exciting.
But an interesting outcome of this is that the consumption of short-term goods and services has come down by a lot, and instead people are consuming more on the long term. So if you track, for example, groceries, you'll see that the consumption of just people buying groceries has gone down, and people are saying like, oh, that's because people don't can't afford food anymore. But if you can actually also see that the purchases of stuff like houses and cars have gone up. So what's happening is that back when the pesos, also people's money were burning, they what they did was to, instead of saving to buy a car, to buy a house, they were rushing into the grocery stores, and just trying to stockpile on food, just because the food will actually hold value better than the peso. But now that they don't need to do that, they can actually save and actually are buying, long-term assets. So that is happening right now, and it's not even because we eliminated inflation; it's just because it has gone down so rapidly.
Hop for the win.
Yeah, I mean, uh, despite the meme coins and stuff, it looks like Malay's been doing some interesting work over there, and very happy to see improvements. Um, as a
Poverty
curiosity,
is now down from 52 to 34% as of this month. In like what, a year and a half, I think.
Yeah, but
Inflation down 25% per month to 1.5%. They removed the currency controls recently, which people thought would be impossible to do or would cause a massive collapse of the peso, and it didn't. It actually held very well, even though they actually had thought it would actually be much worse. So that's part of the reason they got the $20 billion IMF loan. It turns out actually the market was able to absorb the opening up the currency markets much better than people expected. They did not have to use the 20 billion for that they were kind of expecting, is my understanding of it. It's an incredible
yep, you'll be.
story.
yeah, and how has the perception and usage of crypto changed in that? Because I know that a lot of inflation hotspots have caused people to really pay attention to crypto, but if things are getting better, are people forgetting about crypto, or are they still just as interested? Are they more interested now? How's that looking?
Well, I can share my experience. I used to live in crypto, like full in crypto, because of necessity. Because I would just, like, for example, if I travel abroad, I would just not be able to use a debit card. So what I would do is to top up, one of these debit cards, and you can top up with crypto, and I will use that. But now I'm actually able to, use let's say, open bank accounts and use a credit card. And so now I still obviously use crypto, but it's just so much um, better to also have the option to use fiat when I need it. So I think, in a way, it sort of um, goes against crypto adoption, just because it's not as needed as anymore. But still, I think people were made aware of the alternative, and I also think that's a good thing to have.
Nice. As far as the key subject or just anything else, where are we with that? Anyone else want to chime in on something? Is there anything we sort of beat the topic to death a lot of different ways? But is any other angles we haven't covered? If also, if no one, I'll ask something else in case if no one else
I,
brings
I
it up.
think
Yes, go ahead.
I think no one has brought up the petrodollar. So I mean, just going back to US, as we know, the reason, one of the main reasons why there's so much U.S. presence in the Middle East is because that's where the oil is. And so, yeah, I think just weakening the dollar will weaken the need to force the U.S. dollar monopoly on oil and the oil market. So, that's another big driver for wars.
Interesting. Now, do you think there's an angle where, let's just assume something like Bitcoin is used for a petro to buy oil and things like that? Is there an angle where Bitcoin becomes just the new petrodollar?
Yeah, I mean, that could work. Although, I mean, for that to work, you will need to be able to trade oil for or something other than the dollar. And I think that even if Bitcoin were perfectly private, it will be a very hard transaction to make. Like, would they allow that transaction? That's the tricky part to me.
Well, this is the dream of Bitcoin maximalists like Seyfedin Moose, right? Isn't he the guy who said Bitcoin was not meant to be peer-to-peer cash? Instead, it was meant to settle these interbank balances or what have you. So that's what these people actually want to happen. It sounds crazy because I mean it is, but they actually want Bitcoin
I
to
would
become the
argue that
next
that's not a
petrodollar.
bad thing. Why is that a bad thing? I'm not saying that it was meant to do that. I don't really care what it was meant for. I care more what it is more useful for, what the market deems its uses, the use of it should be, or whatever in a free market. But why is it a bad thing to have governments or banks settling their intraday transfers in Bitcoin? Why would that be a negative?
Well, because Bitcoin wasn't meant to start
Who
wars; it was
cares
meant
what
to
it's
stop
meant
them.
for? Well, why would that start wars?
Be- Because that's how they fund it, right? The banks fund the war through inflation. So if all of a
They
sudden
can't print
they
Bitcoin.
have no, but they can have paper bitcoins, right?
I mean, that's a topic we discussed earlier today. That I mean, possibly. I
And
I, I
that's
don't
that
I don't think having
isn't
paper Bitcoin is going to be nearly
isn't
as
that
good
the
for funding wars as paper that they actually literally can just print.
and this is the whole this is Satoshi's original point, right? The disruption of Bitcoin comes from its use as peer-to-peer cash. Once it becomes another tool by, for, and of the banks, the game is lost. In fact, it's been lost since it was hijacked in 2017. But that's why we have so many of these new projects that have reinvigorated the crypto space, because it's not possible to fund a war with Zeno or Monero or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was well said. I mean, we're approaching the fractional reserve, right? I mean, at the point that Joel made earlier. By the way, I've heard two people. Is it Joel or is it Joel? I've heard, and I feel like I'm getting crazy, but like, how do you say it? Tell me right now.
A better question is it Xano or Zano? No, but it
Oh,
is Joel. It's
I
Joel.
just say it the opposite way to mess with him a little bit.
All right, perfect. Well, like
it's fine.
Joel's point, being the custody and the centralized exchange, like, yeah, this is where it's going. Like, and that's why I alluded to earlier. Like, I don't understand the point of Bitcoin in its original intent. It's just gone so far off the rails that for me, like, it doesn't even make sense. You have these competing narratives, and that's why I think there is urgency in order to figure this out. So I completely agree with what Sal just said right there. I think that was well said.
I mean, if we want to talk, I mean, okay, on the topic that we talked about earlier, just I'll say one thing and then we don't have to keep on it. But the way I look at Bitcoin is it has certain things that we deem I forget the word from the Constitution, but like it's not this word, but like irreconcilable, not it's like unchangeable, right? Immutable. Like these are properties, right? The 21 million is one of them. The decentralization, whether it's store of value or payments or people want to put monkey pictures on it, I don't think that most people care that much about. You might, but I don't think most people. That's the main thing that they want to sit and argue about all the time. Um, so I think we have a constitution. That constitution is, what we all have like even kind of made the constitution over time to some extent, and some extent what Satoshi said. But those things stay true, right? The 21 million, the decentralization. Yeah, that's it. I like this. I don't know what it does. Well, that's okay. I think I know what it does, but maybe you don't. Or maybe someone else think it does something different. Who gives a shit? I don't give
I
a
mean,
I
shit
don't think
personally.
there's
I don't think
only
the 21 million holds. I think they're going to have to increase the supply from 21 million because there are no transaction fees. So I don't even think I think that it's a myth that it's going to be limited to 21 million. And I think probably by the next halving, you'll see that pushed. And Peter Todd's been pushing for this and kind of initiating a campaign to increase the supply for the security budget. But Bitcoin was hijacked by technocrats, and the technocrats are going to run into a manufactured scarcity problem.
Yeah, I don't see it. We already see additional revenue sources, and we're still very early. And there are many teams that are trying to add additional revenue sources. I'm talking to 3 different teams who are building additional revenue sources for Bitcoin. And our company doesn't even focus on Bitcoin. That's a small part of what our company focuses on. And we're talking to 3 different projects that are going to add revenue to Bitcoin, including David Chom, one of the people who a lot of this stuff is crafted after in the first place. And there's a bunch of other teams. Tachi is one that that we're actually incubating, that is building meta layers on top of Bitcoin, kind of like layer 2s, but not. It's a very different thing. It's more native, but they're building in that the validators are part of that network, right? You're using your normal Satoshis, and the validators are supporting it, and the validators are making revenue from it. Lightning Network does the same thing. Many Bitcoin miners run Lightning Network nodes because that's an additional source of revenue. Ordinals was an additional source of revenue for the miners, or just people start using it, or banks are settling in it, like we talked about earlier, whether you might like or not like. But if banks are settling in it, they're going to be spending a lot of money to settle those big, massive transactions, right? So to sit here and worry about a problem that's 120 years down the line and say Bitcoin is going to be destroyed because of it seems so short-sighted to me. To think that we won't solve that issue, that humans can't solve these issues, that Bitcoin won't adapt as time goes on like it always has.
Can I ask a dumb question? If at the halving, if the security budget air quote gets cut in half, what's wrong with the hash rate going down and miners going offline? Why does the hash rate have to be continuously going up and to the right? Why can't it get cut in half or go sideways for a while?
Yeah, I mean, the question there is how much security is the right level of security? I would argue Bitcoin lives on the higher level of security. I think they spend a lot on security versus any other alternatives like Ethereum or any other cryptocurrency. As a percentage of Bitcoin or as just a nominal whole hard number, Bitcoin spends a lot on security. Maybe, I don't know what the number is, and you guys can debate it or whatever, but maybe it's 10 times more than is actually necessary, but that's the safest thing because we need something that's 10 times more safe than we think we need. Or maybe it's 100 times or 1,000 times or whatever it is. I would argue even if Bitcoin security stayed the same for 10 years, it probably wouldn't make a damn difference. Now, if it stayed the same for 1,000 years, yeah, that would be a problem because then other technologies might outpace it or whatever. But the fact is, even with the happenings that have been happening and will continue to happen, hash rate is massively, massively going up over time. Now, some will argue hash rate isn't that's not the only metric, and that, I don't know, there's I don't know. These conversations are fun and all, but I think Bitcoin's doing pretty well. It's the most secure of all of them. So if Bitcoin's fucked, man, everything else sure is fucked.
I don't agree with that. I just because the OG falls.
What's the more secure one?
Well, your question.
Anyone
your
that hasn't
question,
been hijacked by a bank.
Well, give me one. Name one.
Monero, Zano, Furo, R.
Monero, just as because Bitcoin of a matter Cash, of fact of what it costs to get hash rate for it. If a big enough actor wanted to destroy Monero, there's a chance they could do some stuff to it, right? Because it's not economically large enough. I mean, I'm not saying that would happen, but if someone really wanted to, if game theory were to play out like you're saying it might for Bitcoin, Monero is much more susceptible to that kind of attack than Bitcoin is.
But there's only been one coin that's been hijacked by the banking cartel so far, and that's BTC. And granted, that was because BTC had posed the biggest threat to it. But
I don't know how. I mean, I'm holding my Bitcoin. They're not touching my Bitcoin. How are they hijacked? Because I bought first and I could dump on their heads?
It's been completely co-opted by the banking cartel. And it's just like we were talking about before, like how Aaron was saying how 21 won't hold. Even if it does hold, there's nothing to stop the bank from inflating it. Nevertheless, there's only a finite amount of gold in Fort Knox, but that didn't stop them from creating all these paper derivatives. So if
the thing that breaks there isn't gold; it's the paper derivative.
let me just finish
Gold
this
didn't
thought, though,
break
because
from that. The paper derivative broke.
so even if Saifedean Ammous and the maximalists get their wish, right, and we have these, and Bitcoin's only used to settle, balances between these giant banks. Even like if that is the case, then we're still fucked, right?
It's
I
not
mean,
just banks. That's not. I don't think that that's what Saifedean, or at least, and I actually subscribe a bit to. I would definitely say Bitcoin should become a settlement layer, but not necessarily just for banks. Banks can settle there. Whoever the fuck wants to. Some fucking black, white, gay, lesbian, banker, not banker, enemy, friend. I don't care who you are. You can settle on Bitcoin. And if whether it's banks, meta layers, layer twos, lightning network, countries, whatever the fuck it wants to be, that is, I mean, that is what the direction
not
Bitcoin is
peer to
going. You might not like that, but I would agree that is the direction Bitcoin is going, a
the
settlement layer.
trouble with that though. The
By
trouble with that though
design.
is there's two problems with that. Number one, it's not P2P cash and therefore not disruptive. And second of
It's
all, it
not
can be
disruptive.
used
Bitcoin is not disruptive. What? Come on.
for
Get the
if
fuck out of here.
Wells Fargo and Chase Manhattan banks start using Bitcoin to settle, their own internal balances. There's nothing disruptive about that. In fact, it's the opposite of disruption because they're only going to use
No,
paper
it's the
derivatives
ultimate
to bomb
disruption
more
when you
people
make the
and to
banks use your
have another
thing.
genocide.
When the banks are forced to use your freedom money, that is the ultimate disruption.
It's not freedom money if it's controlled by a cartel of banks, though,
How is
and
it
then they're
controlled
using
by a
it to
cartel of
genocide
banks?
children.
How
Well,
is
that's the
Bitcoin? Bitcoin is now
hypothesis.
controlled by a cartel of banks? What?
So the
How?
hypothesis. So I was under the impression we were talking about, what happens if it's used as, the way that the Bitcoin maximalists want it to be used, right?
Okay,
Which is as
we could
a
go on that premise,
settlement
sure.
layer for the big giant banks.
A settlement layer in general. You can use that word because it, invokes a negative response in people, but
Right, but it
it's
doesn't really
not
work
like
for it doesn't really work on an individual
I've been
level.
saying forever that Bitcoin will become a settlement layer, and that I believe the better way to scale these things, and lots of people on this panel will disagree, but is that you scale in layers. Because if you scale at L1, you give up too many things. It's the blockchain scaling trilemma. Let's not debate that right now. But the fact is, if Bitcoin does what everybody has, we've limited it. We've limited the block growth. We had a big war about it, and everybody agreed, or most of the people agreed, and 99.9% of the hash rate agrees to now, at least, or at least they just said, hey, maybe they just went this way because they had to, because other options were losing or whatever. To be fair, but whatever it was, we all agreed this is the path for Bitcoin. That it's not going to be Bitcoin at its base layer. Probably not, unless there's some weird innovation that is nothing like what we're looking at now, which are layer twos, meta layers, side chains, enshrined, roll-ups, ZK roll-ups, BitVM, optimistic roll-ups, whatever other thing that hasn't been invented. But the idea is that it is a settlement layer. It is like a perfect, immutable, decentralized, has not compromised in its decentralization, so that we can use it as this ultimate settlement layer, this ultimate ledger. That's how I look at it. I know you don't, but you can argue against it or whatever.
So
Sorry if I'm
let me
getting
just put
worked up.
no, it's
I
fine.
love you, and I know we're all just having a good conversation, but I
Yeah,
do.
cool.
I am
Yeah.
passionate. Sorry.
I should point out. So I wrote some article, I guess back in March here, and I quoted another article I wrote before that about the coming paper Bitcoin crisis, which I kind of feel like satisfies both sides of the issue. Is in whether you're a Bitcoin is hijacked, it sucks, is for peer-to-peer cash kind of vibe, or if you believe it's always going to scale in layers and things like that and be a settlement layer. uh, it's not like a binary between those two things either. It's how does it, if it does scale within layers, which in my opinion, if it does proliferate, that's how it's going to be. Like, I think the inertia is too far to reverse course and go back to the white paper version. But if there's ways you could do it. There's a right and a wrong way, maybe from a sovereignty perspective, right? So the wrong way is becoming a custodial asset that major institutions hold and people transact using custodians. And it loses almost all of its properties over time if that happens, including its security if not enough transactions on the network. there's some other ways. And again, this isn't ideal. Obviously, for me, I like to just use the base layer, whatever I'm using, for all the guarantees, etc. But if it can be used by decentralized protocols, like decentralized wrapping protocols of some sort, where you need to be able to guarantee that there's no paper Bitcoin behind it, that there's the on-chain Bitcoin there, that the tokenized version can never exceed the base balance, and also that there's no custodian or a 5 of 8 multi-sig that can rug users if push comes to shove and actually confiscate their money, just like the government could steal everyone's MicroStrategy money, for example. If you can push it in that direction, I think that's better. The block size debate it's funny because a lot of people still argue about it, and I mean, I've obviously fallen on the big blocker kind of a side, but it's a corollary for the sovereignty debate, where both sides were yelling at each other saying, if you guys get your way, the ability to use Bitcoin in a sovereign way will be over.
It's so true. Both sides make the same argument. Yeah.
Yes, and that's exactly what I think. I think that, like, and obviously, like, I've diverted my attentions away from Bitcoin for the most part, but those who are focused on Bitcoin should keep that kind of in their minds about, like, how do we keep it being sovereign? And the settlement layer for banks part is not really, if that's the primary use case, it's not really very sovereign. It's custodial, not very sovereign. But if you can continue to use Bitcoin in what may be the wrong way, according to some people, but at least it's sovereign, that's kind of what you need to
But
protect.
Joel, the trouble is that what you're warning about is not divorceable from the whole concept of a layer 2 or Lightning Network, right? Because we know that over time, the Lightning Network centralizes, and once it's captured by the banking cartel, which I argue it's already been done, it's simply a matter of time until those major hubs in the Lightning Network are Wells Fargo and are Chase Manhattan, and then we're back to square one. The elephant in the room.
I mean, but there's other things that you can use besides Lightning. There's lots of people building lots of stuff. To what Joel was saying, for example, I'm a mentor at Tim Draper's Bitcoin Fi Accelerator. One of the projects I'm mentoring is called Covenants, and they are building using like HTLC type stuff and multi sigs, basically a way to have it so you could do lending on Bitcoin with institutions but they don't hold your money.
So I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but obviously, I think the correct answer, a more simple answer, is just to stick to Satoshi's original design and keep everything on the base layer.
Right.
And once you introduce the concept of layer 2, it's no longer Bitcoin. At that point, you've just reduced Bitcoin to being a settlement token for the Lightning Network.
Well,
so I mean,
some people think that's a good thing. Some people don't. That's okay. We can agree to disagree.
Agreed.
I mean, fine. It's a slow, expensive settlement layer, but it's not even the most popular settlement layer because stable coins have already surpassed Bitcoin in terms of volume and popularity for settlement, and that actually is going to be only expanding. So it's $27 trillion in transactions last year. It'll be 130 trillion by 2030. So
volume is one metric, right? So and transfers and payments is one metric. You can argue Bitcoin, on that same logic. I forget who it was on I think this show that said before, Bitcoin has no adoption or something, or store value is not a use case, which to me is kind of a crazy thing to argue. But Bitcoin still, in terms of value, I would argue is still 10, 100, 1,000 times bigger than anything else in terms of value. What is the value of USDT and USDC versus Bitcoin? Yeah, they're doing lots of volume payments. So does PayPal, but PayPal's not that valuable. Store value is the most valuable thing in the world. If you compare store value to payments in terms of market caps, size of companies in the traditional space, or what is more important to you? Your these payments for coffee or storing your life's assets? And what is more important for a country? Yeah, not for me.
Cash. I mean, even Mises and Menger. Mises writes about this in the second chapter of Theory of Money and Credit. There's a whole section I encourage everyone to go read, called Secondary Functions, where Mises in 1912, he's writing this. He's literally making fun of economists who believe that the store of value could be the primary function of money. Rothbard says it again in What Has Government Done to Our Money? Menger says it in Principles of Economics. Something only stores value because people believe it'll be useful as exchange media in the future. Right?
Okay.
If it's not good
So
for exchanges,
it
then
doesn't have
there's
to
no
have 1
value.
penny fees to be exchangeable for value in the future, right? If I'm sitting with $10 million in Bitcoin, but I'm only buying $10 of fucking coffee and shit a day, and then at some point in my life when I decide to, I cash out $1 million in Bitcoin and I pay a $10 fee to do that, and then I put it into dollars and I do whatever I need to do, or stable coins or whatever else, Dash or Litecoin. It doesn't matter. It's still convertible, right? Just because it's not used for microtransactions.
But if nobody is willing to accept it as a medium of exchange, then there's no
But they
reason to hold on
are.
to it.
It's one of the most liquid assets in the world.
Yeah, so I get that all goes back to, I guess, the sovereignty kind of a thing. It's like if you can cash out in or convert to whatever in a sovereign way, then that's kind of the objective. It is kind of interesting also. I kind of made this argument on a
Gold
space.
isn't, good payments either, right? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
I kind of made I think the point last week or a couple weeks ago, which is it's sort of an unpopular, I would say it's an unpopular point with myself that I make, is that Bitcoin is the most used medium of exchange in crypto today, that other than maybe stable coins. It just is at a higher level. It's not like for the smaller regular purchases, but as far as exchanging and as far as actual payments, like making monetary transfers, it's being used more than a lot of things. And I think that, it could be used a lot more for a bigger scope of things, but it just because the number of transactions the network puts out has been pretty flat, right? It's been artificially restricted on that. But it's just that rather than scattered around all monetary use cases, it just moved up the value pyramid to where people with higher value purposes of making those transfers has done that. But on the whole, as far as actual transfers, I kind of argue, it's kind of funny how a lot of people who don't like Bitcoin say that you need to be a medium exchange in order to be a store of value. And people who like Bitcoin say, no, you don't. When I would argue yes to both, sort of, or rather, yes, you do need to be a medium exchange to be a good store of value. And that's exactly the reason why Bitcoin is doing well in price, is because it's being a medium exchange better than a lot of other things, or more used than a lot of things right now.
So just to clarify, I'm not smart enough to figure these things out. I'm only going by what Menger, Mises, and Rothbard have said, and they're crystal clear on this subject. I think as far as you're right, BTC is used more often than any other crypto, and I think that has a lot to do with network effect, which is just first mover advantage. But those things aren't permanent, and they change based on things that fluctuate, like usability. And I think in that department, BTC is lacking. So while it's used today more often than other cryptos, I'm not sure it's going to be the case for too much longer.
Right. And that's what I was talking about earlier, about the market being initially a voting machine, and then eventually becomes a weighing machine. And right, to Sal's point, the first mover advantage is quite huge. And yeah, it is the most decentralized network today. But to me, these metrics are kind of meaningless. I mean, the most important thing are the first principle use cases of the chain itself. But I want to pivot. I want to go to Aaron. Aaron, you were talking about growth projections, and then you were cut off. I was actually really interested in that. Could you finish that thought, if you remember?
Hey guys, so sorry. I'm 15 minutes late for another Spaces. This was really fun. If I did get heated with anyone or too passionate, I apologize. But
sorry for keeping you on so late. But thanks always.
no worries, man.
Definitely bring the heat.
This is one of my favorite Spaces, man. So thank you for having me. Okay, cheers, guys. I did pin in the Jumbotron. We have a BitAngels Twitter Spaces, which is Investment Pitch Network by Michael Turpin. And if anyone wants to come to that Spaces, once this one ends, because I think it was probably supposed to end an hour ago or something, but whenever it ends, yeah, come on over if you guys want to continue. See you guys. And thanks for coming last week, Joel, by the way. See you. Bye-bye.
Yep, thanks. Bye-bye. Sorry, who was talking right before? Was it Aaron?
I
Was
was
it?
asked about the stats on transaction volume. So I have this that chart that shows that last year there was $27 trillion worth of stablecoin transactions. It's expected to grow to, I guess, actually 120 trillion by 2030, which is actually more than Visa, MasterCard, and direct deposit. So I mean, it's growing at a huge rate. So I'm not even sure that Bitcoin is winning in, again, on the settlement layer front, and particularly after the Stable and Genius Acts pass, I don't see the U.S. doing any transactions in Bitcoin, right? In fact, they've said, according to this Bitcoin Strategic Reserve thing, that they're not going to sell for 20 years, right? We all believe that. So, stable coins are what is going to be used by at least the U.S. government, and that's actually pushing forward and advancing CBDC development in Europe and in other places in the world. So now you have basically countries competing over who's going to have, what percentage of the digital surveillance currency pie.
It's a good point.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
doing some manual math on the combined market cap of all the stable coins right now, but I'll have it in a second. It's kind of interesting.
Well, look. I mean, the market cap of Bitcoin is high, and it may continue to go up. But when it's going up because governments are stealing money from people through taxes and civil asset forfeiture, is it? Are we excited about that? Are we like? Is that even a market at that point? It's like, yes, the price is going up because people are being forced to buy it with taxpayer money. I mean, why would I want to participate in that?
Well, my problem, and like I said earlier, is the narrative around Bitcoin, especially by these maxis, and the claims are outrageous on what Bitcoin can do. And so right now, not only do you have a first mover advantage, but then you have all these new entrants into the market. And to me, it just seems like a Ponzi where you are basically enjoying the ignorance of new entrants as they buy PTC, not understanding how it works and the scalability problems that it has. And to your point, Aaron, I think those are glaring issues. And I don't know. I mean, first mover advantage, and then also it's like it's not the first blockchain, but let's just say like the first major blockchain obviously to be adopted. I mean, I don't find it's like the first light bulb, right? I mean, the first design wasn't all that good. We had to make lots of different designs, and like I said earlier, I kind of broke the ice on the Bitcoin thing. I don't get it, and that's why I don't hold any. So
Well, I mean, yeah, as the first mover, does anybody remember using the search engines Alta Vista or InfoSeek or Excite or Yahoo? I mean, first mover, on the one hand, people like to say first mover and then talk about network effects. But then on the other hand, they want to say, well, but it's still early when they're trying to rationalize, where it is compared to everything else globally. I mean, again, the problem that I have with whether it's early or not, if you look at the projected growth rate of stable coins and CBDCs, that's actually what we're competing against. And so much of crypto is about people comparing the relative, doing a dick size competition about their relative cryptocurrency. And that's not actually what the fight is against. The fight is a kind of a common fight against technocracy. And we're all collectively losing on that.
Yeah, it's kind of one thing that I think is something I've sort of come to a long, I guess, realization of is, people will, in the free market, people find a way to get what they want. And like, that's one reason why I don't think any particular technology or financial technology or whatever has permanent like incumbency status, because anyone can just pivot to anything else at any point if it's better. And we've seen this for certain roles of Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin's valuation has not pivoted. But also, there's something to be said for like the amount of people who are fighting. Like, the dollar's not going away for a while, probably, because so many people are invested in it continuing. And I mean, that's, as Aaron's pointing out, all the different ways that CBDCs, et cetera, are being used to just, or stable coins, or everything, even Bitcoin is being used to prop up the dollar in some ways. In that same way, I think that whatever does happen to Bitcoin long term, it's not going to be a complete and total sort of overnight type collapse or whatever. I definitely think that enough people have so much money in it that they're going to figure out a way to, wheel and deal its way into continuing relevancy, even if it's even if it's doing something like, let's just imagine a world where, privacy assets become just everything people uses. At some point, I think there would be a massive, like having a tokenized Bitcoin on like Xano's confidential layer, for example. I think that you'd find a lot of people pushing that really hard in order to maintain Bitcoin's consistent relevancy into the future as like, no, we still need it because otherwise everyone's using this confidential BTC thing to pay for stuff, and store their value. Like we need the base Bitcoin layer, otherwise it's worthless or something like that. It'd be interesting to watch. I'm definitely keeping an eye on how that's unfolding. So is there a stone unturned? Have we exhausted all conversational attitudes now that we know that Rock left and sort of took the wind out of everyone's sails?
He was getting heated. It's a good thing that
Yeah.
Justin wasn't here.
Yeah, it would have been like a 7-hour space or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it's a good time to wrap this thing up. What do you guys think? 3.5 hours long enough for you guys?
Maybe.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, usually like my mental model is like if there is steam in the space, I try to hit it the 3-hour mark just to be like, this is cool. Well, thanks everyone for being here. This has been great. Feel free to suggest other topics for other spaces. I do believe we do have one for next week, which is, are DAOs dead? Remember the decentralized autonomous organizations when that was a thing? And there's a lot of narrative, especially in the Ethereum community, that like DAOs are so over. Like everything was a DAO for a while, and that's kind of done. So it's like a debate, yes or no on that. And someone who's very knowledgeable on that, I've already invited to come speak on that next week's space. So everyone here, by the way, is invited. Of course, every speaker here, is invited if you want to pop back in. Aaron, you keep on unmuting. Do you want to say something in particular?
No, I'm good.
Okay. That's what I thought.
It's a glitch. I don't know if I can be heard right now. I couldn't even talk, so I was like trying to talk, but no big deal. Yeah, it's a good point to wrap. I think we've pretty much beaten the horse to death 15 times, so I think we did a good job.
Well, that's good then. Well, let's wrap it up. Next week, our DAO's dead. Be there. Thanks to Xano, of course, for co-hosting and providing some nice, excellent insights. And I mean, they disappeared a while ago, but thanks to Edge Wallet for co-hosting and sponsoring the space. Very, very appreciative for that. Definitely look in the comment of the space for a link to go to download and actually use Edge for all this kind of stuff. Shapeshift Internet a hand up though, so why don't we let you say something before we kind of wrap this up?
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I'm just an intern in a small marketing department, and please help me. I need a goal. It seems to me there's not much of a market in any damn thing if there's no liquidity. And the question specifically is, what depth of Dash or Bitcoin or whatever in our Shapeshift, agnostic, permissionless, decentralized liquidity pool is a minimum necessity? That's the question I want to have answered. I need a goal so I can exceed the goal. And I may be off. This is just my humble, uneducated question. I'll take my answer off the air. God bless you guys. Godspeed. I appreciate you all. Thanks.
All right. I thought I saw Kenton starting to talk, but I guess it'll just be people Duke random like chiming in. I don't know if I mentioned.
I was just gonna say thank you, Joel. No, thank you for having me. This is good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. It's been a fun space. And I did look up stablecoins. I think have 10% of Bitcoin's market cap right now, roughly. So coming up on that, we'll see how that changes in the future. But anyway, thanks everyone, and make sure you follow this account and also Xano and also Edge Wallet, and then share out the space because it is recorded. So for people who missed this glory, it'll be around for a few weeks or so. So Jeff, definitely get on that, and we're going to be working on getting a better music setup for next time. Some fun stuff coming up, and there's going to be another fun song no one's ever heard before was going to play us in next week, let's just say. So thanks everyone, and have a great, fantastic week. Bye-bye.